go to temporary rules.
Okay, Commission, you have 8 temporary rules in your packet. Just no surprise, a lot of them related to the Columbia River, but most of the, at least half of them are related to kind of the area and the dates for the Youngs Bay commercial salmon fishery. One I just want to highlight, which is really cool, which was additional harvest opportunities for hatchery, spring Chinook, and the lower Deschutes. We don't get that very often, but that was really cool that there were lots of hatchery, spring Chinook out there, and we were able to add that opportunity. I don't think there's anything kind of unexpected, but if you have any questions.
Commissioners, are there questions about the temporary rules? And if not, is there a motion?
I move to ratify the 8 temporary rules set forth on the April 24th, 2026 agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to ratify the 8 temporary rules as was just read into the record. Let's do a thumb vote on this one, commissioners, if you will. And it looks unanimous. Thank you all. Then we have just a quick commission update. I just want to mention to all of you, I think I've talked to some of you already about this, but the staff did arrange for us to go ahead and have a May meeting. It will be virtual. It will be about the budget. It shouldn't take more than, we're saying at the outside 3 hours, but I think it'll be 2 hours. And we will have an executive session during that meeting. This was a chance, the budget is the foundational policy document for this agency. And so this will give us a chance to be engaged and ask our questions and get some input from staff and update from staff before we get to the June meeting. So that's what that one is all about. And so that's just information, unless any of you have questions.
We did send a message out just to get it on your calendars. If you could mark your calendars, 8:30 on May 15th.
Oh, you made it 8:30, giving us a half hour.
Well, the reason why that gives us time in the morning to get all of the hybrid meeting set up and then to have you join and us make sure that it's working. So 8:30 to 10:30. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go then to minutes for the February 20 meeting. Any questions, changes on that? If not, could we have a motion on the minutes, please?
I move to approve March 20th, 2026 meeting minutes and continued authority to correct grammar and punctuation.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the March 2026 meeting minutes as was just written into the record. Could we have a thumb votes on this one, please? It's unanimous, Michelle. Thank you, everyone. And we had a request to, again, don't move because you're just fine. We had a request to shift things around this afternoon after this exhibit, which would be the Sauvie Island item would come after this one because we have people who have traveled and need to get back. So sorry to people in the room that are here for other ones. That's what we're planning to do. So now we're ready. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield, hi, Director Colbert, members of the Commission. For the record, I'm Derek Froman. I'm the Game Program Manager. This afternoon, my colleagues and I are here to propose the 2026-2027 game bird hunting regulations. We've got a couple of new commissioners. Welcome. Excited to share this agenda with you. And just for your knowledge, we come before you typically in April every year to set these regulations. And the game bird program is one that we're very proud of. It is very rich in history, in data, and professional expertise. So although this is typically the one time a year we come before you, we have a ton to say, a ton of information. As you can see in the packet, there's a lot of data and information. But as a little bit of spoilers, as you saw in your packet, we are proposing relatively few changes from what was adopted this last year. So although we could talk all day, we have a relatively succinct presentation for you here today. But we are more than happy to venture far into the weeds if you would so choose. So with that, I'll pass the mic off to Michael to start.
Thanks, Derek. Is my mic on? Am I good? Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde, Director Colbert, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Michael Klein and I'm ODFW's Upland Game Bird Coordinator. Today I'll present the staff proposals for the Upland game bird hunting season regulations for 2026-27. Let's see, get this going. I heard it's in the back of the room. Oh, too far. Okay,
And there's
All
a
right.
delay.
okay. One more. All right, there we go. The upland bird regulations are based on a 5-year framework that we have been utilizing since 1999. Upland game bird populations go up and down on a regular basis based on habitat conditions, and having a 5-year framework provides kind of consistent, stable seasons that reduce confusion, assist hunters with planning trips, and lower administrative costs. The framework guides the approach we take to season setting, but we can adjust this annually if conditions warrant. Every 5 years, we do a deep dive and make sure that our season lengths, our open areas, and bag limits are functioning to provide you were here last year when we went through just that process. So we're in year 2 of our 5-year framework. A common question that comes up is why don't we adjust our hunting seasons every year if our bird populations are changing? To help explain this, I've included an illustration that shows several of our upland game bird species arranged by general reproductive potential. Birds with extremely high reproductive potential, pictured on the top, tend to have short lifespans, and their populations can fluctuate a lot from year to year, whether they are hunted or not. These fluctuations are influenced by weather conditions that cause direct mortality, impact habitat, or affect natural predation rates. The birds on the top tend to have higher bag limits and longer seasons. The birds on the bottom may have shorter seasons or smaller bag limits, or even a controlled hunt because they're more susceptible to habitat limitations or have lower reproductive potential. The framework considers that upland populations do fluctuate each year, but our conservative harvest rates do not contribute additional mortality beyond the naturally high death rate of these birds. And in poor years, our hunters tend to be self-limiting. So our effort goes down when there's less birds available on the landscape. I wanted to take a quick look just through our different upland species and show you how we are doing. One way to look at this is just to look at our harvest rates annually and compare them to the long-term average. This is a way of looking at how available birds are on the landscape. So in this we have rough grouse on the top, blue grouse on the bottom. The straight line is our long-term harvest rate, and the wiggly line is the annual harvest. So you can see that both of our hunted forest grouse species are above average as of last year, and our wing bee data shows that production has been up in these species. So forest grouse are doing really well. Our quail, you can see California quail on the top, mountain quail on the bottom. The quail really responded to a couple years of really good precipitation in Eastern Oregon. So you can see that nice bump in 2024. They've come off of that high, which is a natural thing to happen. And mountain quail are above average because they're responding to post-fire habitat from the 2020 fires. And they're colonists and they really enjoy that post-fire habitat.
Michael, sorry to interrupt, but this is an embarrassingly basic question. It sounds to me like you are equating or relating harvest to populations. Are you?
Yes, Chair Wall, that's correct. We could look at harvest per unit effort if we wanted to get down in the weeds. I felt this is kind of a simplistic way to look at it, but it shows how available the birds are in the landscape to be harvested. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I
Yeah.
just, yeah.
Yep.
I'll follow up later.
Right, and the real point is that this is our best way of estimating populations because we don't count our birds
Okay.
statewide. It's not something that's within our manpower. So, but
Thank
we do sample our hunters to see how successful they were. So this is really our best measure of how our bird populations are doing.
Thank you. That helps.
Real quick, our pheasants have been very stable for many years, and they were very similar to the long-term average last year. And then people will be talking about the 2024 chucker harvest. Chucker season for a while, it was a dandy. We have come off of that high. Again, that was related to really good precipitation conditions in Eastern Oregon for a couple of years. So with that, it is important that we talk about our climate conditions and our habitat conditions. The big story this year is our concern about snowpack and the potential for drought. Lack of moisture can have negative consequences for upland game birds in terms of their nesting efforts and brood success. Birds will concentrate around existing water sources, and they can be more vulnerable to disease and predation in low water years. Most of our precipitation this year has come in the form of spring rain rather than snowpack. We also have some concern for what the wildfire season is going to bring us this summer. As we did discuss, not all fire is bad, especially when it comes to upland birds. Some birds, like our forest grouse, can benefit from that, and mountain quail as well. And we have enjoyed some precipitation out in the desert, which hosts a lot of our upland bird populations in the last few weeks. I was out in the Ventura area, and there's a nice bloom going on. Soil moisture has improved. So it's not all grim, but it is, the potential for drought is very serious this year. So given the evidence and indications are that it might not be a great production year for upland game birds, but these birds are well adapted to deal with these conditions. And already we're seeing the birds respond by initiating their nests earlier than usual, trying to time their hatch with the green up and insect production. Upland bird populations and their capacity for high production in good years have demonstrated that they can bounce back from poor years. So given all that information, I would like to dive into our hunting season proposals. In general, our hunting seasons are working really well for upland game birds because we see them cycling naturally, as we saw in the previous graphs. Therefore, we are proposing no change in the framework to quail, partridge, pheasant, and forest grouse seasons, with the exception of some basic calendar shifts. Similarly, we are proposing no changes to our spring, fall, or beardless turkey seasons. Our turkey populations remain extremely robust, but we have been making a lot of changes to our turkey opportunities. There's a lot of harvest opportunity out there. And so we want to sit back for a minute and see if those seasons are having any effect on our populations without continuing to push buttons and pull levers. This slide just represents our special hunting season opportunities that occur outside the regular season. These include the Western Oregon fee pheasant hunts on 4 of our Western Oregon wildlife areas, a pheasant hunting workshop, 10 youth pheasant hunts, a youth chucker hunt, and our falconry seasons. So these all fall within the realm of the game bird hunting season regulations. Okay, finally, as always, we want to spend a little bit of time discussing the status of sage-grouse and the sage-grouse controlled hunt. We know a lot about sage-grouse populations because we monitor them very closely. Sage-grouse are not a listed species, but a species that we have concerns about long-term declines due to habitat loss primarily. Sage-grouse benefit from their status as a game bird, which comes with a dedicated funding source from Upland Game Bird Hunting Validations. These funds are used to pay for our sage-grouse conservation coordinator, LEC surveys, research, and habitat projects. As a reminder, back in September of 2025, you might remember we went through the new sage-grouse plan, which was approved at that meeting, and we introduced the new population model, which I presented here. In this graph, the solid black line represents the abundance estimates from our new model up to 2025. The dash gray line represents the previous model. And so you can see that we were underestimating our sage-grouse population quite a bit by not incorporating detection covariates into our model. The population goal is the dashed blue line on the graph, and it's set at the 2003 level. You can see in 2025, we actually came pretty close to our population goal, which is encouraging. But it is now 2026. Our biologists are out counting sage-grouse as we speak. And so that information will become available later this summer. As a field report, we do have some indicators, of course, that things may not be quite as good in 2026. We can look at our production estimates from the previous year by looking at the wings from our hunter harvested birds last year. Every year, our sage-grouse hunters are really good about donating their wings from their harvested birds, and that can tell us everything from our average nest success to peak hatch date, age, and sex ratios. This information would be either extremely expensive or impossible to collect in any other way. Based on last year's fall sample of 261 wings, we found 0.95 chicks per hen, which is below our long-term average of 1.47. This number indicates that our population growth has probably slowed down and is entering their natural down cycle. Harvest was comprised of 39% juveniles, which again is lower than our average of 47%. So all in all, it seems our production last year fell off after a couple of really good years, as was the case for most of our upland date birds. As I said, our biologists are in the middle of lek surveys now. Skylar Vold, our sage-grouse conservation coordinator, reports that in many areas, lek attendance seems to be very similar to last year. We expect a stable to decreasing trend based on all of this information, as well as incorporating our climate conditions. They did fly aerial lek surveys in the Paulina unit, and they found 2 new leks out there and some additional satellite leks that they weren't aware of. Skylar also reports there's been an impressive volume of juniper cuts in the Paulina unit. So that's great for sage-grouse. While fire can be good for some upland species, it is not good for sage-grouse. So it's always good to take a look at our fire history. And in good news, the 2025 wildfire season was very subdued, following the record-breaking year of 2024. So we had really minimal loss of sage-grouse habitat, as you can see in the map of sage-grouse habitat. The core habitat's in green. The low density is in yellow, and there's very little overlap in fire with our sage-grouse habitat last year. Real quick, I just have a couple more slides. How do we set our sage-grouse controlled hunt permit levels? First of all, if you look at the map, again, you can see our sage-grouse habitat in the background. The units that were open for hunting last year are outlined in red. So you can see we don't hunt the entirety of our sage-grouse range. The unhunted unit are closed due to concerns about small, isolated, declining populations. Some of these have experienced very serious wildfires in the past. So we have, closed those preemptively to hunting until they recover. Regarding the new population model, this is the first year that we're setting harvest regulations with the new model, which shows that we have more birds on the landscape than we thought. But referring back to the plan that was approved in 2025, in the past, we calculated 5% or less of birds allowed to be harvested, trying to keep under that 10 to 11% that we know has the potential to fall into the additive range outside their natural mortality rate. With the new plan and the new model, we are going to be calculating those permits at 1 to 2%, which should keep us right in the same level as where we are now. So we really don't intend to change those recommended permit levels from what they were before. So with that, my final slide, I promise, that that leads us to our initial season recommendation, which is a 9-day season, September 12th through the 20th, with a 2-bird season limit for successful hunters that are drawn in the controlled hunt draw. We recommend setting the permits at last year's levels, as we typically do, and then we will recommend adjustments as needed by temporary rule when the LEC counts are entered and analyzed later this summer. This very conservative approach has been successful at maintaining sage-grouse's status as a game bird, collecting valuable information about our population structure through the wing collections, all while having minimal effects on their population. And as another note, OSU is just publishing a study that looked at our controlled hunt design, and found that hunting contributed very little mortality when compared to non-hunted populations. So that's one that we've been waiting to come out for a while. So that was nice to see. And so with that, I'm going to wrap up the Upland section of this presentation, hand the mic to Brandon to take you through the migratory part of the presentation. You want that?
All right.
Okay.
Maybe. Oh, back. That's the wrong way.
Like an over the holder
Yeah.
shoulder hook shot.
All right. Thanks, Michael.
Good afternoon, Chair Wall. My name is Brandon Reiches. I'm the Migratory Game Bird Coordinator for the department, and I'm here today to present the department's proposals for the 2026-27 Migratory Game Bird hunting season. Advance. There we go. Oregon's blessed with a great diversity of migratory game bird resources with 42 regularly occurring species. 27 of those are ducks, 6 are geese, which are divided into 11 management populations. 4 are migratory upland game birds. And finally, there are 5 migratory game bird species, which are commonly found in Oregon, but we do not hunt. We've just seen that the Migratory Game Bird Program is responsible for dozens of species that depend on a variety of habitats, and we work at many different scales with a variety of partners to conserve, restore, and improve those places for these birds. Additionally, as hunted species, there are a variety of programs in place to measure the health of the populations and monitor harvest. Monitoring of our migratory game bird resources happens in 3 main pillars: population survey, banding, and then harvest survey. Each of these programs plays a key role in our monitoring for our migratory game birds, as well as helping us make appropriate harvest management decisions. And speaking of harvest surveys, I did want to update the commission on the status of harlequin duck harvest. Recall, we began a special email survey of sea duck hunters in 2022 to estimate the harvest of harlequin ducks. And in 2024, the commission reduced the bag limit of harlequin ducks to 1 per day, when previously they were a duck and could be taken at a full bag limit. As you can see, harvest of the species remains very low, with only 3 birds estimated to have been harvested last season. Harvest of this species has been, in Oregon, has been low under both bag limits prescribed over the past 4 seasons, which is likely a reflection of the habitats these ducks use in Oregon during the winter. Many of these birds winter in habitats that are off limits to hunting or very difficult to hunt successfully or safely. We can take the monitoring information, the results of which are dependent on habitat conditions, and put it together with the feedback we get from the public into season recommendations. Whether these are based on explicit adaptive harvest management protocols, Flyway Council harvest strategies, or just basic monitoring information, we can feel confident that we're making the appropriate recommendation. So on to our recommendations for the 2026-27 season. Analysis of the available data supports maintaining the harvest opportunity afforded in prior seasons, except for the white-fronted goose bag limit. Additionally, we're proposing changing the structure of the opening dates for most major waterfowl seasons and the season length in Northwest Oregon for the September Canada goose hunt. So Oregon has long utilized duck and goose hunting zones to set seasons that align with a region's bird distributions and weather patterns. The federal regulations have afforded Oregon 2 duck zones for over 25 years, and in most years, the commission has adopted a season in Zone 2, which is much of eastern Oregon, that opened and closed 1 week earlier than the season in Zone 1, which is most of western Oregon, in addition to the counties on the Columbia in eastern Oregon. A good way to look at this is Zone 1 is primarily waterfowl migration and wintering habitat with few days of ice covers, whereas Zone 2 is primarily waterfowl breeding and migration habitat, which can experience significant days of ice cover during the winter. This split opener system was popular with hunters as it affords them essentially 2 opening days if they're willing to travel. There are some years, like in the past few, where offering these split opening dates isn't possible because of conflicts with the opening of the buck deer season. However, this year, the deer season opener is early enough in October that allows us to propose the popular split openers again. Onto white-fronted geese. So we have 2 management populations of white-fronted geese in the Pacific Flyway, the Pacific population of white-fronted geese and the Thule population. Both occur in Oregon. The Thule population is rather small, and they typically only occur in Lake County, where special harvest regulations limit their exposure to harvest mortality. Pacific white-fronted geese have a much larger population size and distribution, and they're most numerous in Oregon during February and April as they're migrating back to Alaska from their southern wintering grounds. And then primarily they would occur in Klamath, Lake, Harney, and Malheur counties during that time. Bag limits have been very liberal since 2014, when a 10-bird daily limit was implemented in the Flyway. As you can see from the graph on the slide, abundance of these geese grew during the 1990s and 2000s, mirroring other goose populations. However, like other goose populations from the Yukon Delta and Alaska right now, we're seeing the population begin to decline, though they're still well above the Flyway's management goal of 300,000 geese, which is the dashed blue line there in the figure. When the Flyway recently updated the harvest strategy for this population, they established a standard bag limit of 6 geese per day, with the option to consider more liberal measures if the population exceeds 450,000. Our most recent information shows the population has declined below that 450,000, which triggers the bag limit reduction from 10 per day, which would be that more liberal option, down to the standard 6 per day. And this change does apply to the entire Pacific Flyway. Analysis of bag limit data from Federal Harvest Survey suggests this change will have a relatively minor effect on harvest. However, the harvest strategy does include more restrictive measures should the population continue to decline and go below the goal of 300,000. Thing does not like me. Here we go. This season, we're proposing a minor change to the length of the September Canada goose season in the Northwest Permit Zone. Historically, this season was a 9-day season, but recall last year we had room to increase it to a 15-day season because of the reduction in the regular season goose days in this zone. Well, that regular season reduction is still in place. This year, we only have 9 days available between the department's typical opener of the Saturday after Labor Day and then the end of the federal frameworks for this hunt, which is the 20th of September. So that leaves us at 9 days for this year. So our recommendation is to revert to that traditional 9-day season. But as we get into next season and seasons after that, Labor Day will again become earlier in September, and we will be able to offer a few more days in future seasons. So 9 is essentially the minimum in kind of the standard how we do this season. So we should be able to expand it in future years a little bit. There we go. And finally, we typically in the game bird regulations, we have a few department lands rules that we also take the opportunity to update. And so we recently discovered a misalignment between the department lands administrative rules and the big game hunting regulations regarding when big game can be hunted with firearms at Summer Lake Wildlife Area. And so we're essentially proposing to take the administrative rules for Division 8, align them with the big game regulations, and the big game regulations are the more liberal of those two rules. So it would allow a little bit of extra opportunity for big game hunters pursuing big game with firearms at the wildlife area. And with that, that's the end of our presentation, and we'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you. Questions, commissioners? I have a couple to ask you real quickly. Well, go ahead.
Just real quickly, back to the Harlequin duck harvest. Could you expound, if you have the data, on the trend lines for Harlequin ducks? We did receive some public comment, people concerned about harvest of Harlequins. If you
Yeah.
could just inform the public and the
Yeah, so
Commissioner,
Commissioner
appreciate that.
Modal, I hope I pronounced that correctly. And Chair Wall. So as far as population status, we do not have good estimates of either the breeding population in Oregon or the wintering population that occurs in Oregon. They're very difficult duck to survey. They breed on mountain streams, and then the wintering birds, which could be from anywhere in the essentially the lower 48, well, not the entire lower 48, but the Rocky Mountain states of the lower 48 and southern British Columbia, southern Alberta. Those birds distribute to the coast, where they're also very difficult to detect. Essentially, they look like a rock and they're sitting on rocks most of the time. So aerial surveys don't get at them. And so we do not have good information on whether that population is going up or going down in Oregon. We did initiate that survey 4 years ago, a harvest survey to better get at the estimate of Harlequins. The federal harvest surveys are too coarse in scale. They have never picked up a Harlequin harvested in Oregon. We knew that wasn't the case, so we started our own state survey. And as you can see in the information, it's quite low, but it's only 4 years worth of survey data, so we can't even start to draw a trend from that.
Very helpful. Thank you.
My questions were on my first ones were on the same thing about the Harlequins. If we think it's down to 300, it makes some sense to me to stop harvesting them. Would you argue, that's not a fair question. I was gonna say, would you argue against that? But explain to me why that wouldn't be a good assumption on my part.
But Chair Wall, again, we do not have an estimate for Harlequins. I couldn't say if it is 200 or 300. They are certainly not a very numerous wintering duck. They have very specific habitat requirements during the winter. And so I don't know exactly what that population size is, whether if it is 200 or 300 or higher. We do know that most of the Harlequins that winter in Oregon are wintering in areas where you legally cannot harvest them, or they're wintering in areas where it is very difficult or dangerous to your person to do so. And so that helps keep Harlequin harvest low. When it comes to, well, why not have a closure in place if there are very few of them there? Having a closure in the regulations, fishing, you can have a closure. You can generally throw fish back. You obviously can't throw a wildlife back once you've taken them. So if you can list a closure in the regulations, but people start to become then who don't know their ducks as well as maybe they would if they were more experienced hunters, it may talk them out of even becoming a duck hunter when they see a closure listed in the regulations. And so that's one of the reasons throughout the flyway system, we're always very concerned about having to pull that. If we're going to close something, we want to make sure that closure is needed. And we don't believe that that is where we're at for Harlequins right now, because it could have the potential to turn folks off entirely to hunting when they see these super complex regulations. And in this case, that would be a case where I might get a ticket if I even shoot one of these birds. And it's generally not going to happen. They occur in habitats where most people aren't hunting anyway. But if you don't know what a Harlequin is and you don't know where they occur, you could very well possibly just give up because of the fear of violating. So that's one of the reasons that is out there for being real cautious with adding closures into the waterfowl regulations.
Right, and maybe you could speak to kind of beyond Oregon, just like Harlequin, how are they doing in terms of the range?
Yes, sure. Director Colbert, Chair Wall. So Harlequin, the population of Harlequins that are in Oregon is the Western Harlequin population. They range from Alaska as a breeding range, from Alaska and even into Siberia, all the way down to essentially the Cascades in Oregon, as well as then the Rocky Mountains to about Yellowstone or down into slightly south of that in Wyoming. So they are mountain breeder, generally, higher gradient streams. They're unique in that aspect. That population is rather large, hundreds of thousands of individuals. Of course, we are at the very southern end of their breeding range. Our wintering birds, as I mentioned before, come from a mix of birds from the Northern Rockies and the Cascades, and then our breeding birds, of course, disperse to the coast. We don't have a ton of information. The information that we do have from banded harlequins on our breeding streams actually suggests most of our birds winter in Washington. So the birds that are wintering on our coast are not necessarily the birds that are summering in our Cascades. Certainly could be some overlap there. Would expect that there is. But overall, that population is rather large, rather robust. There are other states to the north of us, they have a restrictive regulation on harlequin, but they are much more
easy to harvest in Washington than they are here because of the Salish Sea, Puget Sound protected waters. And then in British Columbia, there's some of the same, very limited hunting there though. And then in Alaska, where these birds,
they are essentially a duck for the on the number they could take in a season.
Points well taken on the larger area, region-wide population. If I have to make weigh the risk, I don't want to turn somebody off from their hunting interests. But if that is one risk on one side and the other is we have a low population and we have people still hunting them, then I would say I would fall on the side of let's not hunt them anymore in Oregon. But that's just my take on it. Seems like we should err on the side of uncertainty. If we don't know and we don't have a way to know how many we have, and we may be very low on the numbers, then that's decisive for me. So just letting people know what I'm thinking. So other questions though? Other thoughts? If not, and Commissioner Lavard does not have his hand up, right? No. Then let's look at motions on these two. If
We do have,
Oh, sorry, we do have
There you go.
testimony. I don't have to vote yet.
Yeah.
Good deal. We have two people then. Is Michelle, do you happen to know if one of these people is?
Yes, I just
one
looked
on
up
your
for
list. Okay, thank you. Worth, are you in the room? Yes. And then Tyler Dungannon. And we also have Michael List, who is virtual. And Michael, because while the other people are coming up, because we missed you earlier, we're going to let you go first. You are if you're online,
Okay.
if you go ahead, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Do you hear me right now? I'm walking over to my
Yes.
truck for you folks. Okay, I'm heading over to my truck right now. I'm
We can,
on a job.
Yes.
I'm on a job site, and I'm really appreciative of all you folks. I've been waiting all day to talk to you guys.
oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm just really gracious that you guys can hear me talk. Let me just get in my truck here and fire this up, and then I will talk to you guys. Like I said, I started at 8 o'clock this morning with you guys, and I got to hear you guys. Do y'all see me there?
Yeah. Yes, now we can.
Yes. Okay. Part of my voice, I've been working 10-hour days and something's up with my throat, but I'm going to talk as best I can. But I sent packages over to you guys last year, and I missed the meeting as well. So I'm a avid bird hunter, dog trainer, outdoorsman, and I do a lot of dove hunting, and I'm also a big waterfowler. So I'm really interested to hear about the outcomes of the harlequin. But dove hunting is primarily my big thing, and we have a problem here in the state with Eurasian collar doves. And I live in Bend, and I actually shoot collar doves about 25 minutes from downtown Bend. There's some areas I go to. And because they're not, quote, game birds, you can use Mojo motorized decoys. And as a duck hunter, I'm all in favor of no motorized decoys on ducks. I'm good with that. But they work really darn well on Eurasian collar doves. But the overlap on that, if it's dove season and I've got a Mojo decoy, I'm breaking the law. So that's why I don't do it. And we have a dove problem in Oregon. Eurasian doves are going to keep getting bigger and bigger. But we also have an idea where we need revenue. And a good way to get more hunters is dove hunting. It's super fun. It's super easy. And I think it would be a really good thing for the commission to look at, allowing just for doves, I'm not saying waterfowl or anything like that, the use of motorized wing decoys like spinners, because I think it would actually be beneficial to hunting dove. You could use it also to spray paint them up to target Eurasian dove. And it's also a good way to get more hunters in the field, especially young kids, which is in turn the revenue that pays for more of the funding services that you folks need.
Thank
That's
you.
all I got. It's not, yeah.
Thank you, and apologies again for the day that we put you through. Sorry, it's great that you actually stuck with it and still talk to us. And it was a creative idea, so thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. Like I said, I think it's something you guys could look into. I mean, doves are not a huge issue in terms of affecting really wildlife per se. I'm in the high desert, so I'm usually shooting them out of juniper trees going to alfalfa fields. But I mean, if you could have again, you can use Mojo decoys on collar doves, but it would be cool to be able to use it in both parts of the season. And it'll also be a great way to get younger kids into hunting. So I hope you guys can consider that. And again, I really appreciate your guys' time and thank you for your opportunity. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And I hope you get off work soon.
unfortunately, no, I got about 3.5 more hours, but thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to you, Mr. Worthington. Go ahead.
Chair, Director, Commissioners, I want to talk a little bit about harlequins today. For your information, harlequins have been protected in the Atlantic states for 37 years. And in eastern Canada, they're considered an endangered species. Now, why I don't understand in Oregon that has a limited number of harlequins, wintering harlequins, why the dusky Canada goose is protected, the bull trout is protected, the spruce grouse is protected, and I haven't had to run a trap line since the mid-90s, so I'm not up on the trapping regulations, but I think the coastal martin is now under protection. And so I just don't understand why, population. Dr. Bob Jarvis, Oregon State University, now retired, had 3 graduate students that did their work on harlequins. I talked to Bob about a week ago and I said, Bob, based on your experience with working with the graduate students and the harlequins, and by the way, I went with several of the graduate students to the upper South San Am River and misnetted harlequins and banded them. So I was in on some of the field research of them. I said, what would you feel comfortable about a population number? And he says, well, it's been a long time since I was involved with them, but he said, certainly below 500. And he said, I'd be comfortable with that figure. If you go into the research, a lot of the researchers that have worked with harlequins think that the number is closer to 300. And in 1992, one of the researchers came up with a wintering population at 200 birds. And we don't have that many harlequins. The problem with a harlequin, it's a targeted species. That drake is beautiful, and it's considered one of the biggest trophies for mounted waterfowl. Thus, a lot of people go after harlequins for the mounts. And then there are the duck hunters, which I was one of them, that went to see as many species of ducks I could bag. And I bagged a harlequin about 40 years ago, I guess, in Washington. The staff apparently feels that the harlequins aren't targeted because so few hunters hunt them. That is true. There are very few hunters targeted. But what they're not addressing, that there are some individuals that specialize in harlequins. And I know of one who bought a bunch of decoys from me when I sold my collection, who was a harlequin hunter. And you better believe that man knows where the harlequins are in the state and he gets them. Millard Hauser, who's Delta Waterfowl's director for Oregon, Washington, Northern Idaho, and Alaska, told me that he talked to two guys from Roseburg that also target harlequins. I mean, these guys go after the birds and they get them. So Washington ran into this trophy status of the harlequin. They once had a 7-bird limit for harlequins. That started attracting shooters from all over the United States that were coming, because there's only 2 places outside of Alaska that you could get a harlequin. That's Washington and Oregon. And after running into a lot of problems with this harlequin shooting, Washington lowered it to 1 per day. And it was still a problem. So they limited it to 1 per season. There was still a problem. So then they closed the season completely. And I heard one of the big harlequin guys in the Puget Sounds, once they closed Washington, said, I'll come down to Oregon to hunt them. Whether he did or not, I don't know, but that was his threat. Last year, they...
Wrap up with your time's up. Yeah, so if you could wrap up.
Okay. Well, what I'm saying is that basically the harlequin is a special bird. We don't have very many of them in Oregon. I honestly believe that duck is more valuable for people to look at than to shoot. And I'm an avid duck hunter.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And appreciate that you stayed around all day to testify. It was
Well,
helpful.
it's important to me.
It is.
I've been on this harlequin thing for 10 years now.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Tyler.
Thank you, Chair Wall, Commissioners, and Director Colbert. My name is Tyler Dungan, and I'm the Conservation Director for the Oregon Hunters Association. And I wasn't expecting to talk on harlequin today, but since we're on the topic here, you know, OHA does support this limited conservative hunting opportunity. If the department came back next year with numbers that triggered a response that, hey, we may have issues here with our harvest, we would listen and we would like to have that conversation. But the reality is right now our harvest is so low and so conservative for harlequin. There's no reason to close the season. There's no reason to stop people from harvesting their harlequin like this gentleman did in Washington. You know, I think it's a coveted opportunity for few, and that's what it is at this moment. So it would be a hastily made decision to make any kind of closure today on this topic. But let's talk about it in the future. Now, if I could get to my favorite bird, no offense to harlequin, sage-grouse on the upland side, OHA wants to say for the new commissioners that we support our greater sage-grouse harvest in Oregon. It's a coveted opportunity, again, for few. It's hard to draw permits now for sage-grouse. There's a high demand, limited number of permits. Harvest is extremely conservative. I frankly believe Oregon is more conservative than it could be, than other Western states are when it comes to sage-grouse hunting, and that's okay with our hunting community. Hunters do provide a considerable amount of funding for this species when it comes to conservation stamp funding. And do you guys know that over 50% of our conservation or our upland game bird stamp funds go specifically to sage-grouse, and they fund positions in the department? I think that's really important. And I'll just leave you on the sage-grouse topic that there are many factors that we heard of from Michael there that are driving population fluctuations, but hunting is not one of those things. We want to move on to turkeys. And again, Michael's making my job easy because she said the words right out of my mouth. I felt like, you know, sticking to the 5-year framework, making sure that these regulation changes that we've implemented over the last 6 or 7 years are not having an impact on turkey populations that predominantly use public lands is exactly where OHA is on this issue. So we support the department and their proposals with turkeys. We also want to make note that we do support using hunters to address damage on private lands. And we want to make sure that district wildlife biologists have the flexibility to address damage on private lands where they're becoming a nuisance. But we are concerned or remain concerned about turkey populations that predominantly use public lands. On to migratory game birds here, and then I'll wrap up. The Northwest Goose Permit Zone. Last year, you dig up in the record, we recommended a daily bag limit of 4 Canada geese with a sub bag limit of 2 cackling geese. And I bring this up here today because we want to have this conversation. I'm not going to hold up the show. I know you guys aren't with this. It's going to get rubber stamped, I'm sure. But next year, we want to have this conversation about expanding our hunting opportunity and creating a sub bag limit for cacklers, because cacklers and westerns are very easily distinguishable on the wing. And we feel like we might be limiting some hunting opportunity there. So with that, I appreciate the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Tyler, and for the information about the cacklers too. I kind of forgotten that one from last year, so thank you. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
both. Yeah. Okay, commissioners. You look like you're reaching for yours. Go ahead.
Looking around, see. Thank you, Chair Wall. The question on harlequins, the term is where I hear is wintering harlequins. That to me tells me there may be part of a bigger population that's spread around, and this is just what ends up in Oregon.
Yes, Commissioner Spellbrink, Chair Wall. The wintering harlequins in Oregon, again, likely come from throughout their southern part of their range. There is only, to my knowledge, ever been one banded bird harvested by a hunter in Oregon, and that bird came from Montana. So very limited evidence, but the evidence is there that there's the harlequin move around, and that would be in just that's how they do it.
And as far as targeting, I'm not a bird hunter, but I'm a fisherman, and if I was targeting a population that was 300, I'd have to work awful hard to find one in the state.
Chair Wall, Commissioner Spellbrink, if I may, for the record, Brian Wolfer, the administrator. As Brandon indicated before, it can be very difficult to target harlequin because of where they live. And just to be clear, because the beach is considered highway in Oregon, so that's kind of our beach bill from back in the day. These harlequin do spend time in that rocky shoreline. People can't hunt from that shoreline. They can only hunt from a boat. And so then in that wintertime period, that becomes very dangerous. And so those harlequin that we do have wintering in Oregon, and we're on that southern end of the range. So the broader population, most of those birds are wintering north of us. And likely even some of the birds that do nest in Oregon don't necessarily winter in Oregon. They often can move north. But those birds that do get hunted are during those times when they make it into bays, but that's not necessarily where they typically live. So the majority of that habitat is in fact a no shooting area from the beach and very, very difficult to hunt from the water.
Commissioner Labhart.
Thank you, Chair Wall. So for the sake of the new commissioners, this is deja vu all over again. A couple years ago, the commission addressed this issue. I think, Brandon, can you tell me when we had the same discussion a couple years ago,
Yes.
right? It was 2 years?
Yes,
2 years ago? Okay.
Commissioner Labhart, Chair Wall, it would have been the 2023 commission meeting, I think, was when this first came up.
Okay, so we had similar discussions, and Brian took the fire from me because he addressed exactly what I was going to say. We debated this and had a long discussion about it, and I think the commission voted in majority to move ahead with this for the reasons that both Brandon and Brian talked about. If we want to review it again, I'm more than happy to do that, but I don't think this is the time to do that. I think we need better science and data and to have a discussion about it maybe at a future date, but to make a rash jump decision now, when we've already made that decision once before with some significant discussion among the previous commission, I think would be dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you. It looks like that's it on the questions. Is there a motion?
I move to adopt regulations for 2026, 2027 game bird hunting seasons, amend rules for department owned lands, and OAR Chapter 635, Division 008, 045, 051, 052, 053, 054, and 060, as proposed by staff and shown in attachments 3 and 4.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the regulations for the 2026-27 game bird hunting seasons, as was just read into the record. Let's do a roll call on this one, if you will. Michelle, please.
Morrison,
Yes.
Modal,
Yes.
Hatfield Hyde,
Yes.
Hall DeFreeze,
Yes.
Spellbrink,
Yes.
Labhart,
Yes.
Wall.
No. Motion carries, and we will move then. Thank you all, and we will move to then item E, which is Sauvie Island. Yes. That's correct.
I just want to announce that I'm going to go to virtual because I have a young person graduating with some honors and I'm not going to miss it. So thank you.
Congratulations.
Good luck. Thanks. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Stephen. If you want to go ahead and introduce it, that's great.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde, members of the commission, Director Colbert. For the record, my name is Steve Nemel. I'm the district manager for the North Willamette Watershed District. I'm joined today by Oregon State Police.
My name's Luke Schwartz. I'm a lieutenant with the Oregon State Police. I'm assigned to the Fish and Wildlife Division. I oversee the enforcement efforts of fish and wildlife personnel in the Northwest region, including Sauvie Island.
Thank you. We're here today to talk to you about some longstanding traffic and human safety issues at Sauvie Island Beach. We want to tell you a little bit about the pilot program we put in place last year and about a proposed solution to move forward. So first of all, I will figure out how to work the clicker.
It's delayed a bit.
Point it behind you. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Hold up one arm.
There we go.
It works sometimes.
All right, sorry about that. So first thing I want to do is introduce you to kind of the star of the show today, the Sauvie Island Wildlife Management Area. Sauvie Island is first and foremost a wildlife area managed to protect habitat and support fish and wildlife conservation.
Do you want to advance it to the next one, Steve? Is that what's? I feel like I'm going to start running the clicker. It's driving me crazy. I feel so bad for every speaker that's gotten up here and has had to struggle with that. Sorry, Steve.
I got it figured out. Apologies.
Thank you for your patience. Sorry.
No problem. I'm again, apologies. I'll dive back in. So Sauvie Island Wildlife Management Area. Sauvie Island is first and foremost a wildlife area managed to protect habitat and support fish and wildlife conservation. It is about roughly 12,000 acres. It was established in 1947, again, for the primary purposes of conserving wildlife habitat and providing a place for people to go hunt waterfowl. It is regionally important. It's not just locally important, but it's located in an important spot at the confluence of the Willamette and the Columbia Rivers and is on the Pacific Flyway. As such, it's, as I mentioned, really important for waterfowl as well as neotropical migratory birds and a lot of other wildlife species. 37 mammal species, 12 species of reptiles and amphibians, and about 275 bird species. It's also a conservation opportunity area and a regionally important priority wildlife connectivity area. So I just say that because one of the core reasons we have Sauvie Island is really for the wildlife habitat. That's the core mission of that area. But it is also located approximately 12 miles from downtown Portland. So that puts it in really close proximity to roughly half Oregon's human population, which drives a lot of visitation. On an average year, we can see about 750,000 people, visitor days, out to Sauvie Island. And that is a lot of pressure that is put on that habitat that we're trying to conserve and manage. So one of the main draws for coming out to Sauvie Island is actually the beaches. Along the western shore of the Columbia River, we have these beautiful sandy beaches: Willow Bar, Walton Beach, Collins Beach, and the North Unit beaches. Those beaches are served by one road, a double lane, but admittedly undersized road called Reeder Road. It's actually also gravel at portions of its length, which further reduces its ability to manage traffic. One thing just for stage setting, the red triangle you see up there, that's our east side check station. If you ever hunted waterfowl out at Sauvie Island, you'll be very familiar with that location. It'll come up in our story a little later. More than half of the visitors to Sauvie Island, sometimes as much as 65% of our visitors, are actually people coming to the beaches just for that sort of recreational opportunity. That's great. All the people coming out, they're enjoying nature, they're enjoying the beach, they're coming to visit the wildlife area. It's a real amenity to the city of Portland. However, with that many people, obviously there's going to become impacts to wildlife. You can't take the human population of one of Oregon's small cities, move them out to a bunch of beaches and back again on a daily basis on hot days in the summer and not have significant disturbance impacts to wildlife. We've also seen impacts to habitat from fires, cutting down riparian vegetation. Sometimes people will drive vehicles out onto the beach. Of course, all those people come with them increased waste and trash, and as I mentioned, a lot of wildlife disturbance. So that's an important part of the issue that we're dealing with. The other part of it has to do with human safety. As I mentioned, the road is undersized. We also have relatively limited parking at Sauvie Island, which can result in vehicles vastly outnumbering the parking spaces available and causing a lot of congestion, some really significant traffic backups on the road. Because of all of these issues, a few years ago, ODFW hired David Evans and Associates, and a consulting firm, to do a review of parking and traffic out on the wildlife area and give us some recommendations, which they've done. So just to dive in a little bit more about traffic and congestion on Sauvie Island, it's really driven by hot days that happen to fall on the weekend. If we have a day that's over 85 to 90 degrees or higher in Portland, it causes a mass exodus of people to come out and visit our beaches. Parking demand, according to the David Evans and Associates report, sometimes can exceed our parking available by 24 to 80%. So that's a lot more cars than we have parking available to them. If you can look on the left-hand picture there, you'll see a lot of triple, double, and triple parked vehicles. When people do that, their vehicles sometimes will actually enter into the roadway, causing everybody coming down that lane to have to move into oncoming traffic, which can cause just ripple effects, in some cases for miles with traffic. It's a narrow access road, as I mentioned, and when this happens, we can have a complete loss of emergency vehicle access. Lieutenant?
Yes, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde, Director Colbert, members of the commission. I don't think the public safety aspect of this can be overstated. You're talking about a very narrow road, and although not 24/7, when we have those hot days and the influx of people, we do not have the resources to sustain that. The vehicles come in, they double park. Along that narrow roadway, the only shoulder space is that area behind vehicles when they're legally parked. When vehicles double park, as Steve mentioned, sometimes the back end of those vehicles extend out into the roadway. On top of that, Reeder Road, like he said, is the only egress point for that area on the island. On multiple occasions over the course of my 26 years career with OSP working out there, we've had fires that have blocked the road. We've had traffic completely stopped where we can't get an ambulance through to somebody who needs medical aid. We are on one end of the island responding to one call. We get dispatched to the other end of that wildlife area and we can't get through. The parking occurs across Reeder Road from the beach access points. pedestrians are forced to cross that road to access the beaches. So you have a situation where you have vehicles stacked up, hot weather, people are frustrated, and you're trying to get people across the road, and people are making these desperate maneuvers to try to get around the vehicles in front of them, et cetera. On multiple occasions, the double parking has created situations where we actually have individuals with these big lifted pickup trucks, and they'll attach chains to the pickup trucks and literally drag the rear double parked vehicle out. The only problem is there's no place to drag them to except in the middle of the road. And in this situation, we could dispatch or request dispatch to send a tow truck. Those tow trucks come from Portland and from Scappoose. The turnaround time to get a tow truck out there to remove a vehicle out of that roadway is significant, upwards of an hour, sometimes more, or rarely less. And so in a situation where there might be an emergency and that vehicle is blocking the road, or the traffic is just stopped and you have pedestrians coming across it, even if we could get emergency vehicles through there, that's a nightmare situation to respond to running code, which is lights and siren. If it's completely blocked, we don't have the ability to get to an emergency, simply put. We've gone through the extent of even positioning a OSP boat on the opposite side of the Multnomah Channel, anticipating there might be some point where we might not be able to access an emergency situation by roadway or by vehicle. So I don't think the situation here is being overstated. We appreciate the Department of Fish and Wildlife's efforts at recognizing these challenges and making efforts to mitigate them, and we support this proposal.
Thank you. And just to set the stage a little bit too, this commission has actually already taken action on some of the problems we've seen out there. Historically, Sauvie Island was a place that people would come out, they'd enjoy, they'd party a little bit, but they'd also bring alcohol with them. So at times there was significant alcohol consumption that would result in drunk driving, fights, more calls to service for OSP. And in 2018, this commission took action and banned the use of alcohol on the beaches during the summer months. And that was a real important decision. The picture you have up there right now, that is actually an ODFW truck that was hit by a drunk driver leaving the beaches. So that's just an example of the kind of things. It was obviously very personal for us at that instant, but we really appreciate that effort, and we're trying to continue that good work here now. So just as a couple more examples, some of the more extreme situations. In 2017, OSP decided to close Reeder Road completely one day because traffic was so backed up that it was the situation the lieutenant. In 2020, beach traffic stopped, and it was about a 2-hour wait for people to get through. And at that time, there was very little ability to get emergency access through. And as part of our David Evans and Associates report in 2022, at one time at 3 o'clock on a sunny afternoon, there's 1,688 vehicles on the beach. There's only 928 parking spots available. So more than 700 vehicles were parked in other locations. So what that means, and what usually happens in those scenarios, is they're parking on the side of the road, sometimes in dry grass. They're parking in the road. We have a lot of in-holdings up there, neighbors that live right next to us. Sometimes they're trespassing, parking there, double, triple parking, the things we just talked about. So it's a pretty significant issue. So we really wanted to try and take some action last year and see if we could bend the needle and make.
Maybe you need to go one more slide there. Sorry. I mean, if I could just interject, just what you just heard from Oregon State Police. I think I was the deputy in my position about 2 weeks, and I had the opportunity to go out and visit Sauvie Island over this issue, and it just could not continue. And it was loud and clear that they were continuing to try to support this location, but it was just getting harder and harder. And so, Steve's going to tell you about this pilot program, but our goal was to try to keep it open on these weekends, because that's the other alternative.
Is to close it on the weekends.
Exactly. And so this pilot and the rules that you have in front of you is really trying to allow for some amount of use on those weekends, but there's just absolutely no way that the current state could continue because of liability and impact to habitat. So I just want to be clear that that was the other alternative we could have gone with. Go ahead.
Thank you. So as Director Colbert said, we decided to launch a pilot program in 2025, and we articulated some pretty clear goals for that program. The first was to reduce impacts to habitat that we see from all these people on the beach. But the other primary thing is to improve human safety and make sure we can maintain that emergency vehicle access. We also thought that this relatively unregulated, chaotic environment could actually be a bad user experience for some of the beachgoers. So we were hopeful that changes that we might implement might actually improve the experience for people. And we also wanted to make sure, and it was really important to us, that we maintained access for those private landowners within holdings, that they had an opportunity to access their property at all times. And finally, the final goal was to reduce the investment of OSP's time. The law enforcement that is done out there is from our primary partners here. And the more time they're doing social issues is the less time they're following their real mission to catch people hunting and fishing illegally and damaging habitat. Ken?
Yeah, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde, Director Colbert, Members Commission. Yes, I totally agree with Steve's last statement. Our primary role out there is natural resource protection, protecting the habitat. The Department of Fish and Wildlife already has rules in place in the wildlife area, including rules pertaining to alcohol. There's efforts that have been made to address some of the public safety issues, but we have to have the freedom to enforce some of those regulations. And when overcrowded parking occurs, we're stuck focused on overcrowding parking, divert to a total 100% public safety approach. And we don't have the ability to enforce some of these rules, which are good rules, which are meant to keep people safe and to maintain access to those beaches in a very safe manner that protects both the individuals visiting as well as the resource.
So how did we implement this program? We went through a pretty intense effort to plan this out. We first began communicating with businesses and other partners and residents. We enacted a temporary rule, which this commission approved, creating a new product called the Sauvie Island Free Beaches Pass. We then created that in our electronic licensing system and obtained a permit from Columbia County to manage traffic on Reeder Road. We circled back again to David Evans and Associates and developed a traffic management plan, utilizing that east side check station that I talked about as a way to separate northbound and southbound traffic and have a mechanism to divert traffic when needed. And then we established that checkpoint at Reeder Road, at Reeder and Retnar Road. So we would run the checkpoint then on weekends and holidays during the summer and require people to have that Sauvie Island Beaches Pass. But we knew this change was going to be a big change. Things had been left in kind of the current condition for decades out at Sauvie Island. So it was going to be a big lift to educate the public. All right. Okay, so we launched a pretty massive education campaign. We reached out directly to landowners, business owners, ELS vendors. We worked with ODOT to set up a reader board on the roadside of Highway 30 so people would have information before they even reach Sauvie Island. We set up 4 reader boards on the island itself, and by the end of summer had 4 billboards on Highway 30. We developed a dedicated website that had a rationale for the program, a quick link to ELS for people to get the documents they needed, and on days we needed to close the road, a list of alternative swimming locations in the Portland area, as well as cooling shelters. We placed flyers on cars, did a press release, gave TV interviews, and we were all over social media. So we really did the full court press to try and get the information out there. So how did the system actually function? As I mentioned, we set this checkpoint up at Retnar Road at our east side check station. When people came through, if they had already received they would need to have 2 documents. They would need to have the beach pass, the new free document we created, and the traditional wildlife parking permit. When they came through, if they had both of those documents, we just said, thank you, we appreciate you coming out, please enjoy Sauvie Island. And then throughout the day, we would be looking at parking in real time. And as parking started to fill up at Walton Beach, especially Walton Beach, we focused on because that was kind of the choke point. When parking filled up, it would cause that backup of traffic. So when traffic filled up at Walton, we would essentially stop issuing new passes. And so if people came through again at the checkpoint, they had a pass, whether they bought it 2 weeks ago, the day before, or 5 minutes before, they were allowed to continue on. If they didn't have a pass and the parking was filled up, and that only happened on 2 days that summer, so twice we had to tell people if they didn't have a pass, I'm sorry, but you're not going to be able to come to the beach today. Here's a card with the QR code and some other swimming locations that you could go to. As you can imagine, people were pretty frustrated when that happened. We only had to do it twice last summer, and it was again in the service of public safety. So what were the results of the pilot project? First of all, it was very successful, big picture. We were able to keep peak vehicles below 1,000. Emergency vehicle access was maintained at all times. We had a reduction in calls for service to OSP and fewer habitat impacts. Lieutenant?
That's correct. During the days when the pilot program was activated, or active, I should say, we did not see some of the issues that we previously observed with some of the overcrowded parking. There were also other unanticipated benefits that we experienced, an overall reduced call for service. I don't know what to attribute that to. I think maybe just an overall sense of responsibility by some of the beach goers. Another benefit that I observed from a public safety, law enforcement, first responder type of mindset is where the parking passes were checked. Did that create a situation where there was some backup, where there was a line? Of course, but the logic behind the location was very well thought out. It was in a location where there was an alternate route to get around. So in my previous statements, I talked about Reeder Road being the only point of egress. Down at Rettenauer Road, there's actually other options that allow you to circumvent. And so that's a benefit that I observed from a first responder mindset.
Thank you. So our stated objectives in terms of safety, I think we accomplished those pretty well, but we were curious about the feelings of the people that went through the system. So we did a customer service survey after the fact. We contacted everybody that got a pass and left us an email address and asked them a series of questions. We had 1,705 people respond, and the results were very positive in general. 76% of respondents said the overall quality of their experience was either good or excellent. When asked to rank possible future scenarios, such as paying in advance and showing a document to either an attendant or a kiosk, that actually ranked higher than the previous unregulated system with no limitation. So as big picture, the majority of the people were supportive. For example, there was a quote that came out from one of our comments. It was way smoother than I anticipated, and it resulted in finding parking on a noon on sunny Sunday at Collins. Amazing. So there was a lot of people that were very satisfied with it, and that checked out. Every day I worked out there, I would go around and talk to people behind the gate. And once people got past the checkpoint, they were very happy with the situation they met. Of course, there was complaints. There were some people that weren't happy with it, and there were some common themes that came out of that. One, there was a lot of confusion over needing both the beach pass and the traditional parking permit. Requiring people to have 2 documents to go to one place was just inherently confusing to folks. We got complaints about poor cell service and the usability of our ELS website. The cell service, not a whole lot we can do about that, but we're going to try and do more education. If people get it the night before while they're sitting in the comfort of their own home, then cell service is not an issue. In terms of the ELS website, we are trying to make some changes there, develop a button that will essentially be one-stop shopping for people that want the new document. Folks talked about a lack of clear signage before arrival. Again, we had multiple signs out there, billboards, reader board signs, but we are going to try even harder and earlier this year to get the education out to folks. There was frustration with long lines. At the longest, we had about a half-mile line, probably took about 20 minutes to get through. And that only happened, I think, one day for about 2 hours. You have to compare that to the closed roads and 3 miles of blocked traffic historically. So what are we proposing here today? Our proposed changes. We want to essentially take the confusion over needing a pass and a parking permit and turn that into one document. the new Sauvie Island beaches parking permit. It would be required at Walton, Collins, and North Unit beaches from June 15th through Labor Day. The standard wildlife area parking permit would still be good for the rest of the wildlife area and even on the beaches outside of that summer season. $10 daily, $30 seasonal mirrors the current fee structure precisely, with one exception, which is the seasonals will have to be significantly restricted because it's the issuance of those dailies that will allow us to control parking. So more people will probably have to get dailies than used to just be able to come out on their annual parking permit. But again, this system will allow us to limit the number of parking. One other thing that was critical with the previous system, when we had the free pass, there was no profit for any of our ELS vendors, our very important partners. So if they sold a free document, there was nothing that we couldn't remunerate them in any way. So with this, they'll be back to the same fee structure and would be able to get $1 of compensation for each one sold. So in the last week, we had some media on this issue. I did an interview. There were other interviews, other TV stations, and this resulted in quite a lot of public correspondence. The feedback was mixed. We had some positive complaints. We had a fair amount of criticism as well. Folks were concerned about cost, and there was a real desire to use their annual wildlife parking permit on the regular weekdays. And there was also some misunderstandings you may have seen about what we were proposing. There were some limits that I think people were assuming. So for example, some folks thought we were just going to limit people to 500 people for the whole season or 500 people per day. That wasn't the intent at all. It would function very similar as it did parking and only shutting down the issuance of new permits if parking was limited. We also heard some concerns from prepaid vendors. That's similar to testimony you heard in December and January, and I anticipate you'll hear later today. One thing I just wanted to remind the commission about, in terms of the prepaids, that was a decision that was made previously and was response to the need to be in federal compliance and the direct result of an audit. So we basically just can't issue those prepaids anymore. Also, just want to acknowledge, and this was in our fiscal impact statement, that change in prepaid policy did have an impact on local businesses. To the extent that this program reduces traffic, it also could have an impact on local businesses. But we're really, in our positions, having to look at this through the lens of human safety and habitat protection.
If I could just add also, with the pilot, we ran that as a free beach pass, which meant that even vendors that, kind of sell through our electronic system, they didn't get any kind of money. Under the proposed fee structure, vendors that are selling the daily passes through the ELS system would get their typical agent fee. Sorry.
Thank you. So with taking in some of that correspondence, we actually wanted to present in front of the commission today a slightly modified proposal. So we still want to create the new Sauvie Island beaches parking permit, required Walton, Collins, and North Unit beaches, June 15th through Labor Day. But the change here would be that we would only require the new document on weekends and holidays, going back to the successful framework of our system last summer. The standard area wildlife area parking permit would then again be good on the rest of the wildlife area, good on the beaches outside of the summer season, but also would be good on the beaches during weekdays. So $10 daily, again, a very limited number of $30 seasonals. And this process would also allow us to control the amount of parking and traffic issues on Sauvie Island. So the plan for 2026, if the commission were to approve the proposal, we will immediately begin a pretty early and robust outreach campaign. Like I said, getting people to do this ahead of time in the comfort of their own home is key to its success. We would hire 2 additional ODFW seasonal staff and finalize contracting with our excellent vendor from, it would be from a vendor to help us control traffic management. We would begin selling the new document, the Sauvie Island Beaches Parking Permit. And again, we would establish that checkpoint on Reeder Road. And we would check those from weekends and holidays from June 15th to Labor Day. A couple things we'd probably do a little differently this year. We now have all those email addresses from people that went last year. We would send emails, start communicating with them directly, letting them know about the new system, any changes. We would also probably hire our contractor 1 week early, do a soft launch, open up the checkpoint, and just instead of checking things, we just hand out flyers as a way to help inform people. So we have a few more tools at our disposal that we'd like to use. The other things that we'll continue doing is Spanish language translations, possible other language translations, and press releases, and of course, traditional news outlets and social media.
While you're getting to this, just also want to recognize that, we did this pilot because we knew we needed to learn, right? We were really trying to keep things open as much as we could. And we did it free the first year just as a method for learning. But similar to when our OSP Fish and Wildlife Division are doing these safety issues, they're not doing fish and wildlife enforcement. Well, similarly, when we're paying for a traffic study and a traffic management team through a third party and additional staff, every dollar that we're spending on that is a dollar we're not spending on habitat and infrastructure on our wildlife area, which is why we are proposing this as a $10 to at least offset some of that cost and allow for us to have those seasonal staff. Again, it was a pilot program. It was extremely labor intensive for all of our staff. And I will tell you, even at the pilot level, it's not sustainable for our staff. We put in so many hours because we wanted to do it as best we could, get good data. But that was all through existing staff. And that's why the $10 will help us to pay for those 2 seasonal positions to just take some of this burden of the weekend work off of our existing staff. So again, this is why it was a pilot. We wanted to learn and see what it would take to run it, what additional resources, what cost, that kind of stuff before we set a price. And that's why we started free. So unless you have anything on those points.
No, I would just say that that's exactly right. Our Sauvie Island staff, they have full-time jobs getting ready for the hunting season, managing habitat, all of those things they typically do. And they work their weekends and holidays. Same with OSP. Our traffic management vendor did an excellent job, and all the work that everybody did, all those hot days, we still wound up with the excellent customer service that you saw in the polls there. So I think with that said, the staff recommendation is to adopt our modified proposal as I just described.
Thank you. Let's look for questions or comments from staff, and we do have 5 people who would like to testify. So any initial questions first, or do you want to hear people? Okay, then we will go. Thank you, and don't go very far.
Okay.
If you will, please. Kristen Kirk is in the room, so if you will come forward, please, and then we will go to Dion Burcho, Marilyn Leno, Chris Lake, Keely Nudo on online. So go ahead. Thank you for staying long enough to testify. Sorry, this one.
I had a question about the modification. Are they able to clarify that before I speak, or as far as the modification, I just want to make sure I understood that correctly.
Steve, could you come back up and just clarify very quickly exactly what the modification is? Do you need your slide back up?
Oh, yeah.
I just want to make sure I understand that correctly.
Could you just, in a couple sentences, say exactly what the modification was, because it was very helpful.
Yeah, so the modification would be basically the same proposal we put forward. The Sauvie Island Beaches Parking Permit as a new document would be needed for Walton, Collins, and North Unit beaches. Same time frame, June 15th through Labor Day. The only change is that it wouldn't be during the week. It would just apply to weekends. So very similar to what we did last year, except it would be introduced with a fee structure.
Can I ask a question?
Very quickly,
Okay.
please. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure I understand. So the annual permits that were already purchased and the annual permits that will be purchased will be good during the weekdays, but not the weekends or holidays.
That's right.
During that period.
During that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairman Hall, Director Colbert, members of the commission. My name is Kristen Cook. I'm the owner of Summer Seasonal Store Sauvie Island Cove Market. The pilot program last year was very disastrous for the visitors and the stores on the island. I find it concerning that the ODFW does not consider any of the community businesses on the island as important individuals or groups, and has never once approached them or discussed any of the changes in the last 3 years, all in the middle of summer season prior to making the changes. ODFW has not taken into consideration the island expertise of the beach stores or the realities of the location, despite our many attempts to communicate. Apparently, wealthy landowners make the cut. So many people come out to the island during the weekdays, which I guess that's going to be great for the annual permit holders. The pilot program last year was absolutely confusing and chaotic. The stores took the brunt of educating the customers. It was told to us a week before they launched it. They put signs on the road. We are doing incredible amounts of unpaid labor explaining this because the ODFW was nowhere to be found during the week to explain this to customers. So we do not get any compensation. The permits were taken away from us, but we have to do all of the work and provide all of the resource for the visitors. The ODFW provides a few unusable toilets and a few trash cans down at the beach, and that's about it. These programs, these experiments that keep happening in the middle of the summer with no warning, and we're not being told. I found about this by accident. We don't have any information. It's causing complete hardship on the stores, all the businesses on the island, and we've never asked to collaborate or any communication from the ODFW. Our stores sold over $1 million in permits in 7 years, but I guess we're not important. So the fact that we're going to have to deal with yet another change this year, and we are going to be the ones getting the brunt of it. By the time they get to the checkpoint, they've gone through the stores. We have to exhaustively explain everything. The website is not user-friendly. It doesn't go straight to the parking permits. We have people who need to pay cash, people who have no cell phone service, elderly people. We have to walk through almost everybody on their phones with no cell phone service out there. And we do not get paid for it. And the ODFW is down there on days when it's cloudy. All of this checkpoint thing is for a few days of the summer, for a few hours in the middle of the day. All of this chaos and confusion is just for a few hours on a handful of days in the summer. If it's not a sunny day, it will not fill up. In fact, as you heard them say, only 2 days last year did they reach the total there, and the rest of the time they did not. So I am highly opposed to this proposal, and I'm sure you saw a lot of the comments. Not one that was for the proposal on the website. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. We will go to Jan Virgil first, and then Marilyn Leno. Are they online?
Dion is online.
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Go ahead, please. And you'll have 3 minutes as well.
Okay. Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, Director, and Commissioners. My name is Dion Vershell. I'm a Sauvie Island resident, volunteer with the Sauvie Island Fire Department, and I have managed Reeder Beach Campground and Country Store located on the island for the past 23 years. I'm speaking today on behalf of Reeder Beach. Reeder Beach has served as a parking permit vendor since the program began in the 90s. We've been a part of making this system work on the ground, helping visitors navigate a busy, complex environment. That's why these recent changes have been so difficult and why I'm speaking today. In the agenda item summary, it states, while developing the new parking permit plan for Sauvie Island beaches, staff made sure to involve the local community and key partners, including one Sauvie Island landowner, the Sauvie Island Fire District, and the Columbia County Sheriff's Department. The stores and the other businesses on the island are the local community and key partners, and we were not meaningfully involved. One property owner does not represent the broader community. Although most access is in Columbia County Sheriff's Department rarely, if ever, responds to incidents on Sauvie Island. Most often, the agencies that are present and respond to things on the island are the Fire Department, Multnomah County Sheriff Office, and OSP. That matters when you describe who was consulted and what partnership looked like. I feel like this was a missed opportunity. When pre-printed passes were eliminated, it didn't just change a process, it removed our ability to participate in a practical way. The $2 vendor fee reduced to $1 per permit sold turned into pennies after the credit card fees. The alternative model simply didn't work for our business for other reasons and other longstanding island businesses. And yet we are still the ones fielding confusion every day from hundreds of frustrated visitors. The pilot program did not go as smoothly as described. On the ground, it created confusion, delays, and constant questions. The two-pass system was not seamless, which we brought up prior to it being implemented, that it wasn't going to probably be that great. The transition team that came up from Salem for the island business phase out didn't understand the realities here or hear any of our concerns. Confusion continues. Annual pass holders are confused by the new restrictions. People who rely on cash are effectively shut out. Staff time is being diverted just to explain a system we didn't design and are not a part of. I support managing capacity. We've all seen the consequences of overcrowding firsthand for years. The stores out here and property owners deal with the fallout of all issues beach related and are the information hubs of this rural island. But this system has taken something that worked and made it more complicated, less accessible, and harder on everyone involved. I feel both limiting capacity and involving the businesses could have been achieved. This is affecting every business on the island, not just ones that cater to beach traffic and passes. This could have been a partnership. Local businesses have decades of real world experience on the island managing exactly these challenges. We were ready to help build something better and the opportunity was missed. I do support solution 6.1.1 in the extensive traffic study. A staffed gated checkpoint could simplify access, improve safety, reduce the need for dozens of flaggers, and create a system that actually reflects conditions on the ground, while including, hopefully, those of us who have long helped make it work. I urge you to read through my full letter that I submitted to you earlier this week and to reconsider the current approach and engage the full community moving forward. Also, thank you for proposing the weekend-only approach today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Could we go to Marilyn Leno then? And then Chris.
Marilyn and Chris neither are online.
Oh, okay. Then we will go to Keely Nudo. Keely, are you there?
Yes.
Go ahead, if you will.
Yes, thank you for having me today. And first of all, the two people who spoke before me are very important people on our island, and we adore what they do and appreciate them very much. So I do want to honor them in my conversation, in my comments. I think that I might be that one landowner that is being referred to. I am the last house on the road before we get to the public beach. While this system has not proven to be perfect through the pilot or maybe even going forward, it is a step in the right direction in protecting the safety of my family and for those people who are visiting the beach. Because of the overcrowding, many times the road is blocked. People are trespassing out of the parking areas and going into our fields and parking hot cars on dry grass, starting fires on the beach on our property, adjacent to the public property, because they can't. They know that it's against the law to do it on the public property, so they think if they hop the fence, they can do it on ours. The state police oftentimes cannot get through to monitor the things that are happening down there. This truly is a hot day, weekend kind of issue. We don't have the issues at the beach. But one of the things that came out of the pilot program from last year that I think is important is that the people who are going through this process, and yes, it's arduous, and I know many times talking to Kristen about how difficult it was to help people navigate the system. The people who are navigating the system, who are getting the information and who are informed, are doing it the right way, and they're also the people who are treating the habitat of our animals and the safety of our residents in the appropriate ways. So there are so many positives that are involved in this process. yes, there, it's not perfect, and we'll probably need to continue to make changes. But I think that as a community and with the help of ODFW and OSP, I think that we can make this so it is safe and enjoyable for everybody. We just all need to come to the table, and we just need to keep making that forward progress and informing our community so that we can all stay safe and enjoy the beauty of the beaches that we have on the island.
Thank you. That's the end of the people for public comment. And so our staff still.
Yeah, maybe, Steve, can y'all come
Steve,
back
can you
up?
come back
just
up?
For any questions or discussion?
Commissioners, do you have questions?
Eric has his hand up.
Mark. Commissioner Labhart, did you have your hand up?
Yep, thank you, Chair Wall. My question is more of a rhetorical question, and I'm actually going to apologize to while I'm saying this. Maybe it's been a long day and I'm tired. So I'm gonna throw out a nuclear option here, which I do not support, by the way. But the nuclear option is this is not a state park. This is a Sauvie wildlife management area that provides important refuge for biologically diverse communities of wildlife in a highly developed area with 275 bird species, 37 mammal species, 12 species of reptiles, and numerous species of fish and plants. The nuclear option is what are these thousands of vehicles doing for that purpose on this wildlife area? It's not a state park where state parks are to provide recreation. You know, the nuclear option is, well, if we can't fix it, we'll just close it and go back to what we really is designed to back in the, I don't know, 1900s or 47 when this thing was put into place. That's what it was put in place for. It wasn't designed to be a state park. And so the nuclear option is if we can't figure this thing out, folks, let's just shut it down and go back to what we really think this place is supposed to be, a wildlife area. So don't necessarily support that. What I do support is a compromise. And we've got to try to work through this. We've got problems. You all admit that. You all agree with it. And so this strategy that the department has put together is maybe not perfect, but it is a compromise. And so if we can't figure out a compromise, then, you know, maybe the nuclear option is the best thing to do. Put it back to what it's supposed to be, a wildlife area instead of a state park. And so I don't agree with that, but I'm just frustrated that we can't figure this thing out. The department's gone to a lot of work, put in a lot of time and effort and money. And we're with the state police, when I fully agree, the state police isn't traffic cops out there like they're on the highway. They're wildlife troopers that should be helping us manage the wildlife species. And that's their intent, is not to be traffic cops and getting into issues that like this. So let's just try to figure this thing out. And when I read the compromise, I'm thinking, well, this is pretty good, but I read your letters too on some of your folks and how frustrated it is. But I'd say let's give this a try. Maybe it's not perfect, but you know, if it doesn't work this way, maybe the nuclear option is best. Just close the whole thing down and let's go back to the wildlife area. Sorry for the frustration, but that's my opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner Labhart. We have a couple other commissioners that would like to speak. I don't know who was up first, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair Wall. I was just going to mention that, you know, it was kind of confusing as I read through it and everything like that, but I really appreciate the modified proposal because kind of when I got done reading, that's exactly a couple of things I came up with, you know,
Yeah.
and so I appreciate the modification and, you know, I know it's not perfect, but, and again, maybe we could have a biannual report on how it's working or something like that, but as far as, I appreciate staff working like they did, and I think, you know, like I say, I'm in support of the modified proposal.
Thank you, Commissioner Spellbrink. Commissioner Morse.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the presentation, which really puts the emphasis where I think it has to be, which is on the public safety issue, right? I mean, as Commissioner Labhart said, this is a wildlife area, but this is a public safety issue, and we've got to do what we can. None of us wants to be in a position where someone dies out there because emergency responders can't get out to help them. We just don't. None of us would sleep well if that happened. So we've got to take care of that public safety issue. That said, I'm sensitive to the impact on the local businesses, and I really appreciate the emphasis that you put on communications last year, and are intending to do even more this year, because as you noted, that was some of the feedback from the pilot was people were confused. So it seems to me maybe there's an opportunity to work with some of these local business owners on that communications plan between now and when we need to really launch into it, so that we can get some of their feedback and input on how to avoid them having to be, front and center on a lot of those communications. And then related to that, I mean, again, it's confusing to people because it's a change. It was a change last year, it's a change this year. So the question I have is, while I'm always in favor of adaptive management, is our intent to try and hold this steady for a few years so people can kind of get used to it before we do any further refinement down the road?
I think we would probably want to, kind of like we were talking earlier with the game management, sometimes you need a few seasons to get a sense of where something is going. And also, I think if we keep changing it every year, it won't give people time to adapt. So unless we get some strong signal or some real obvious thing that we need to change it, I would say, yeah, let's hold it steady for at least a few years and give us some time to really make it work.
Thank you.
I don't have a question for you on this one. I think you've answered all the questions. It seems to me on this one, we have the priorities right. This is first and foremost a wildlife area, and that gets thought about first. We absolutely can't miss the public safety pieces, and that has to be what we're working on. We have to think about those. So I would echo what you just said, Commissioner. And I appreciate what you have done to work with people. It's never easy. It makes some people mad, and I hate that, but it just happens. And so I appreciate that you will continue to work with people to try to figure this out. I appreciate the compromise that you identified, and I think it seems workable. So I support what you're doing on this one. Are people, any other questions? If not, let's look for a motion.
Chair Mull, I'll make a motion, please. I move to adopt modified proposed changes to OAR 653-008-0053 and 653-008-0147 as shown in the PowerPoint presented on April 24th, 2026.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved.
Discussion?
Okay, go ahead.
Can part of the, I don't know if we put it in the motion or maybe later, but I think Commissioner Morrison mentioned, I think it was Commissioner Morrison mentioned this, to put it into place for a couple of years. And so can we have maybe a sense of the commission about when they would come back so that we give direction to the department that says, we'd like you to come back in whatever it is, period of time. And I'd have to ask the director what that would be, like 2 years or 3 years or whatever it would be, so that they could come back and make sure that, okay, we've got it in place. We're going to try this. This is the best effort we've had so far, but we want to make sure that we've got some consistency and then come back to us and review it. So we have something that gives a direction from the commission to the department, if that's okay.
Commissioner Labhart, I'll come right back to you with an answer, but I want to say, if possible, we could adopt or not this motion and then turn to your piece so that we have the language clear. Would you be okay with that?
Yes.
Then it's been moved and seconded to adopt modified proposed changes to OAR 653-008-0053 as was just read into the record. Those in favor would, let's do a voice or a voice call on this one, if you will, Michelle.
Modal,
Yes.
Hall DeFreeze,
Yes.
Spellbrink,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Labhart,
Yes.
Hatfield Hyde,
Yes.
Wall.
Yes. Motion carries. now could we turn to you, Director, and ask the question that Commissioner Labhart just asked?
Commissioner Labhart, Chair Wall, what I think if we could get 2 years of experience, we would be happy to come back with you and kind of report back on, we can also continue to do customer service surveys of folks that get the beach permit, so that we'll have that data for you. So does 2 years seem like a responsive amount of time, Commissioner Labhart?
Yeah, that's fine with me. And I don't even know if we need a motion. It's just a sense of the commission. If we get head nods or something, the sense of the commission that they'd come back in 2 years and give a report. We've done that in the past.
So I'm okay with that, but I don't want to overload the sort of what we're calling for here, sort of the sense of the commission piece. But I also do want to be responsive to some of the comments that have been asking for a greater engagement from the local business community on the island. So when we come back in 2 years, if we could have, those folks involved in what is being envisioned for whatever the next iteration is, I think that would be helpful.
That makes sense. You're nodding, Steve, but I also want to.
Yeah, we think we could continue to do that and kind of, assuming there were any changes in 2 years.
Thank you. And it looks like Michelle is furiously writing down the sense of the commission on that one, which will probably be great to have later. Thank you so much for your work on this and for your work over the last months and months on.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We can all sleep better.
Yes. 5-minute break, and then we will come back for C, D, and F.
lot of road time.
Good afternoon, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde, Commissioners, and Director Colbert. For the record, my name is Melanie Bukovac, and I am the Assistant Project Leader for Pacific Halibut and Groundfish with the Marine Resources Program based out of Newport. I'm 2026 recreational and commercial Pacific halibut fisheries. Next slide, please. Today, the commissioners are asked to adopt quotas, season dates, and management measures for the recreational and commercial Pacific halibut fisheries in 2026. Pacific halibut fisheries are federal fisheries. Therefore, staff will be recommending that the commissioners adopt the federal regulations of the management process and allow time for any questions the commissioners might have. The finer details, such as season dates and quota allocations, are provided in the agenda item summary. Next slide, please. Management of halibut on the West Coast is a collaborative process. The International Pacific Halibut Commission, IPHC, is responsible for the overall research and management. The Pacific Fishery Management Council, or Council, develops annual regulations for Pacific halibut fisheries, and the 3 West Coast state agencies, along with the Washington Treaty Tribes, actively monitor fisheries and ensure the interests of stakeholders are represented at the council level with a voting seat and membership in advisory committees. There are multiple opportunities for public involvement at the international, federal, and state levels, such as advisory groups at the IPHC and council meetings, and public meetings hosted by ODFW staff. Because of the comprehensive, scientific, and public process, we are confident that the resulting halibut federal regulations represent the best available science, along with the interests of Oregon stakeholders. The feedback that we have received from the public for 2026 is in support of flexibility in when people can fish. You can see this reflected in our recommended season structure. Our annual recommendation to the Commission is to adopt the federal regulations into Oregon Administrative Rule by reference. Next slide, please. During the Council's annual halibut management process, a catch sharing plan is developed which specifies how the West Coast quota provided by IPHC will be allocated amongst the different fisheries and subareas. The West Coast quota, or Area 2A Fishery Constant Exploitation Yield, FCEY, is shown in the green box on this slide. In addition to fishery allocations, the catch sharing plan also specifies season structures, bag limits, and in-season flexibility within and between recreational subareas. The boxes I've circled on this slide highlight the commercial halibut fisheries and Oregon recreational halibut subareas. Next slide, please. For Oregon, the recreational allocation is nearly the same as it has been since 2019. So the proposed season dates for 2026 are similar to what was adopted last year by the Commission. Staff recommend that the subareas south of Cape Falcon and north of the Oregon-California border begin on May 1st, 7 days per week, and begin with a 2-fish bag limit instead of a 1-fish bag limit, as quota attainment has been low in recent years. The Columbia River subarea is co-managed with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they prefer to align halibut fishing opportunities with other Washington subareas to avoid crowding in open ports while other ports are closed to halibut fishing. Staff recommend the Columbia River subarea begins April 30th and is limited to specific days of the week for all depth fishing. For additional details on the recreational season structure, please refer to the halibut map that is available in the exhibit packet, attachment 5. There are no changes to the directed commercial halibut fishery this year, as the season will again begin on the fourth Tuesday in June as a 3-day opener, with a second opener scheduled for July 7th through July 9th. This fishery is managed coastwide as one fishery from the Canada-Washington border to California, though most commercially harvested halibut comes into Oregon ports. Next slide, please. Our staff recommendation is to adopt the federal rules for the Pacific halibut, recreational, and commercial halibut fisheries by reference, which include harvest levels, sport season dates, commercial opening dates, and the 2026 Pacific Halibut Catch Sharing Plan. Next slide, please. Thank you all for your time, and I'm happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Any immediate questions?
Just a quick comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Wald. Yeah, quick comment on the commercial side of things, because I've spent a fair amount of time in my career doing that. And I like to see the 3-day openers rather than, because you have a catch limit anyway. And when it got down to 10 hours, it started out 2 weeks and then it went to 10 days and then 3 days and 24 hours and then 10 hours. And the 10-hour seasons were like, you couldn't depend on weather or anything else. So I really appreciate seeing the 3-day openers for the guys.
Thank you. I have one quick question. We've been relying on the feds, and it seems like we have a little bit of room right now with this one if we're not meeting quotas on all of them. But are we in a position where if the federal funding gets cut back on this, seems to be happening often enough that we should worry about this, can we make the assessments?
Thank you, Chair Wall. Federal funding cuts do not impact halibut so much because that is managed by the International Pacific Halibut Commission, and IPHC is funded jointly by the US and Canada. Furthermore, US funding comes from the US State Department rather than the Department of Commerce, like NMFS, the National Marine Fisheries Service. And so the State Department has not been seeing the same cuts in funding and budget reductions that NMFS has been seeing recently. So because of this, although IPHC has not been impacted so much by federal funding cuts, they have seen their funding as relatively flat for the last few years, while everything else has gotten more expensive regarding their surveys. So they have had to scale back their annual stock assessment survey in recent years. Specifically, how this has impacted Oregon is that there were funds specifically allocated to Area 2A for the 2025 survey that occurred. And we also, IPHC also received some additional funds from the US State Department and from Canada to supplement surveys for this year, for 2026.
So we're okay for right now, and something to worry about for next year then. Then commissioners, is there anything else or a motion?
I move to amend OAR Chapter 635, Division 004 and 039 rules for the 2026 recreational and commercial Pacific halibut fisheries as shown in Attachment 3.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to amend OAR Chapter 635, Divisions 004 and 039, as was just read into the record. Could we do a voice vote, Michelle, if you will?
Spellbrink.
Yes.
Spellbrink.
Yes.
Morrison.
Yes.
Modal.
Yes.
Haldefreed.
Yes.
Hatfield-Hyde.
Yes.
Labhart.
Yes.
Ball.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's go. Thank you both. And we'll ask you the same question next year about funding for sure. Let's go to Exhibit D if we can, please, Ben. And thank you both.
Commissioners, we do have newsletters summarizing our 2025 halibut season. I'll leave them on the back table there by the exhibit packets.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Hear about ocean fishing. Shavio is going to introduce it. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield-Hyde, Commissioners, Director Colbert. For the record, my name is Christine Manette. I'm the Ocean Salmon Technical Resource Manager for ODF&W. And I would like to talk to you today about the 2026 Federal Ocean Salmon Regulations. With me today is John North, ODF&W's Fish Division Deputy for Marine and Columbia River programs. I will conclude my presentation to you with the staff recommendation to adopt them by reference for commercial and recreational marine salmon fisheries in state waters, which extend from 0 to 3 nautical miles offshore. Next slide, please.
Let's move in this.
The Pacific Fishery Management Council, or PFMC, follows an annual process for developing federal ocean salmon regulations that include robust public involvement via participation of the industry members, environmental and community representatives, and consideration of testimony that we receive, as well as other input from the public. The Council ensures that West Coast salmon populations remain within all applicable Endangered Species Act standards and other applicable federal laws. Next slide, please. I think we're already on it.
Yeah, one notch.
Could you please revert? Thank you. In early March, every year, the PFMC adopted 3 salmon season alternatives for public review. In addition to written and verbal testimony at the March PFMC meeting, these alternatives were also presented at public hearings held in each state. The hybrid Oregon meeting took place on March 24th, 2026. And then earlier this month, on the 12th of April, the Council developed the final set of commercial and recreational seasons that I'm presenting to you today. As a final annual step, the PFMC recommends fishery management measures for federal waters to the U.S. Department of Commerce for final approval, which is expected by May 16th. Subsequently, the National Marine Fisheries Service has the authority to implement and manage marine fisheries in federal waters. And now I would like to move on to the next slide, please. So this is just to orient you as to where these regulations would take place. The geographic areas applicable to marine salmon fisheries regulations considered by the PFMC include waters off of Washington, Oregon, and California, again from the 3 to 200 nautical mile stretch ribbon offshore. Management areas specific to Oregon are divided into 2 major sections, north and south of Cape Falcon, near the town of Manzanita, and then further split into the sub-areas shown on the map. And you see the Aceta Bank management line there that is applicable to the troll fishery, the commercial sector regulations. I will be speaking primarily about fisheries occurring in the Central Oregon coast sub-area, which extends from Cape Falcon south to Humbug Mountain near the town of Port Orford, and the Southern Oregon Klamath Management Zone, which extends from Humbug Mountain south to the Oregon-California border. Next slide, please. Salmon fisheries are designed and managed to limit the impacts of fisheries on weak stocks. As the Pacific Fishery Management Council is developing final fishery plans through an iterative process, technical staff repeatedly evaluate the status of dozens of individual Chinook and coho salmon stocks and examines how the proposed fishery scenarios will affect these stocks. This slide only shows a few of the considered stocks and other limiting constraints. And they're particularly applicable to Oregon fisheries. The 2026 metrics shown here represent the National Marine Fisheries Service consultation standards, which are established by federal managers each year to ensure that fisheries don't jeopardize listed species or adversely impact designated critical habitat. The federal criterion for Chinook salmon abundance available for southern resident killer whale prey north of Cape Falcon this year is not a limiting factor, since we are well above the threshold, which is the first line on this table. Lower Columbia River natural Thule Chinook salmon are often a primary limiting factor for Chinook fisheries north of Cape Falcon and in the Columbia River. The maximum allowed exploitation fisheries from Alaska to Oregon and is based on the strength of the forecast. This year's rate of 41% is the highest category because the forecast for this stock is very good and has been in the recent past. The next two Chinook salmon stocks are important for fisheries south of Cape Falcon. For Klamath River Fall Chinook, the projected spawner abundance is used to determine maximum allowed harvest rates, which this year is 8.6%. It includes ocean and in-river fisheries, both recreational and tribal. This year's allowed harvest rate incorporates a 45% buffer to account for past fishery performance, so impacts to this stock were a primary consideration in designing this year's fisheries, resulting in major restrictions to California and Southern Oregon fisheries. For Sacramento River Fall Chinook salmon, the criterion includes a minimum combined spawner escapement goal of 188,300 adult spawners, which we are projected to exceed this year. The Pacific Fishery Management Council tracks and evaluates many West Coast coho salmon populations as well. I'm showing only 2 ESA-listed coho salmon stocks that are relevant to fisheries planning in Oregon. For Lower Columbia River natural coho, the 2026 National Marine Fisheries Service consultation standard is no more than 23% total exploitation rate for combined ocean and freshwater fisheries, and the current estimate satisfies this standard. The ESA standard for the Southern Oregon, Northern California coho salmon stock varies by population with an allowable total exploitation rate that varies from 15 to 16%. The 2026 projected exploitation rates listed here account for marine and freshwater fisheries, including tribal harvest, where applicable. ESA impacts to Oregon coast natural coho are also important in planning Oregon salmon fisheries, and we anticipate reporting on this particular stock again to you in June, when we bring proposals for consideration of freshwater coho fisheries to the Commission.
Could you say that last sentence again? Which
Sure.
one are we going to get in June again?
Coho fisheries will be presented to you in that will be implemented in freshwater. It is scheduled to come to your attention during the June Commission meeting. And in that context, you will hear more about Oregon coastal natural population status and fishery performances, as well as Lower Columbia River natural coho.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. This slide summarizes the final 2026 PFMC adopted commercial seasons from Cape Falcon to the Oregon-California border. The season has already started on April 14th for all salmon except coho, and includes fishing opportunities through the month of June. The area from Cape Falcon to the Hasida Bank Management Line will be limited to a 2-week season in late July to reduce interception of Klamath Falls Chinook. The fishery will reopen in September from Cape Falcon to Humbug Mountain with a coho salmon quota of 7,000 fish. Once the quota has been met, the fishery will continue for all salmon except coho until the end of October. Weekly landing and position limits are in place for both Chinook and coho during the month of September. The open season south of Humbug Mountain is limited to 2 weeks in April and 33 days from mid-May through mid-June, since this area can intercept stocks of concern at a higher rate. Overall, however, the 2026 commercial fishery season is slightly improved from last year. Next slide, please. On to the recreational fisheries. From Cape Falcon to the Oregon-California border, as it was adopted by the Pacific Fishery Management Council. The salmon fishery started on March 15th and is scheduled through August 31st without interruption. That's a rare occasion. We have not had this in recent years, so this is an improvement. Hatchery coho retention is allowed from June 6th through August 23rd, or a quota of 47,500 marked coho. Once that quota has been met, then it would just revert back to all salmon except coho. And that fishery would go through the end of August. The marked coho salmon quota is slightly higher than last year. I believe it was 44,000 last year. During the month of September, the area north of Humbug Mountain is open for all salmon retention with a non-marked select coho quota of 27,500 fish. And that is slightly less than what we had for a non-marked select fishery last year at 30,000. In October, or as soon as the non-marked selective quota has been met, coho salmon retention is prohibited, but the all salmon fishery except coho remains in place through the end of October. Next slide, please. And this will bring us to the commission action regarding the staff recommendations listed here to adopt the 2026 regulations, again by reference, so that the ocean recreational and commercial salmon fisheries in state waters match the federal regulations as proposed by staff and as reflected in the draft Oregon administrative rules shown in attachment 3. And this concludes my presentation.
Thank you. We have 2 people who would like to testify. Do you have immediate questions, though, commissioners? And it doesn't look like Commissioner Labhart does. So Nick Saba is the first person, and then Conrad Gowell. Nick he's not online. Okay. And so we will go to Conrad. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Wall, Director Colbert, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Conrad Gowell. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today on behalf of Oregon Salmon. First, I wanted to say just how impressed I was with the field trip yesterday that we were all able to attend. Seeing the on-the-ground restoration, partner collaboration, life cycle monitoring efforts across the Siletz and Uinta Basin was truly inspiring. I think when often pie, and the field trip that we went on shows that Oregon is trying to invest in ways in which we make that pie bigger. But there is still more to do. I came here to testify on 2 species. First, I want to dive deeper into Oregon coast coho, and then I want to talk about Chinook just briefly. Regarding coho, I'd like to highlight an opportunity I think is worth pursuing as we continue our leadership in the salmon recovery world. Amendment 13, which guides coho harvest in the PFMC process, has not been updated since it was originally adopted in the late 90s. At that time, we had some of the toughest years for coho and limited data on what natural production actually looked like. There's an opportunity to conduct a management strategy evaluation. Some of the most technically sound and up-to-date models of how we can optimize our fisheries. These have recently been done on Bristol Bay sockeye, a fishery that has continued to produce some of the best commercial fisheries across the world for salmon. You know, with this opportunity, I think we have the ability to stress test our harvest models to say, are we spending these impacts with the greatest opportunity for our fisheries, our local communities that depend on those fish, and for the conservation benefit, and optimize all three of those things to potentially get better outcomes than we're seeing today with Oregon and Coast Coho. I think that has the ability to propel both fishing and conservation, and I'm committed to bringing the resources, scientific expertise, and working with ODF&W staff to make this happen. I hope we can work together on this critical need. Secondly, I wanted to continue the conversation with Chinook and bringing Chinook back to Oregon's watersheds. We know up to 70% of Oregon's coast Chinook harvest occurs in far north fisheries. So what we are talking about here at PFMC is really what's left after the majority of harvest has already occurred on Oregon Chinook stocks. You know, Alaska just set their commercial harvest at 200,000. Half of those are Oregon's fish. That's double the allocation that you're asking to approve today. So I think everyone in this international process needs to look at the challenges they pose and say, how can we do better? So I know my time is running short. I want to highlight just really quickly some economic data. Dr. Hans Radke provided testimony at PFMC. He's the prior chair, an economist who lives south here on the Oregon coast. By just simply shifting the existing harvest that we are currently doing into rivers closer to salmon's origin, we could bring between $6 and $10 million of additional fisheries economic value to our state. That analysis was done in 1997. If we were to transition that to today dollars, that's a potential $40 million. And using the impacts in the same way, but on local fish populations that are brought back to local communities. And I think that's the kind of opportunity that I want to ask the questions for as we prepare for future PFMC processes and engage Oregon's communities in the Pacific Salmon Treaty setting process. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. I'll turn it back to you, Chair Wall.
Thank you. Questions? None right now. Thank you. Thanks, Conrad. And the other person, what were you about to say? Questions of staff. I want to come back to a question just to follow up to see if you have other things to add to what there were a couple of things that Conrad said that would be useful if you have immediate thoughts. But before that, just detail, why did we close the Humbug to California zone until May 15th? Was that one that we did close until May?
Chair Wall, yes, that is correct. The last in-season management action took place on April 12th, and we closed this fishery because based on industry sector inputs, we had to make a decision on where to use the allowable impacts that were on the table that we could use. And the decision was, or the desire was, to use those impacts during other times during the year, even though they were, so to speak, more expensive, would take up more impacts per time period. But it is a better way to conduct the fishery because of the better ratio of effort versus catch. So the industry recommendation was to close the first 2 weeks in May and then reopen on May 16th or May 15th, I'm sorry. 16th, 16th, yeah, 16th. So that was a conscientious decision to extend available opportunities later in the year when the probability of economic considerations was higher.
Okay, that makes sense. I know we're short on time, but can you go to slide 5? And I have 2 questions. One is, you talked about the SRKW numbers, and how does that play out? Is it possible to put 5 back up there, or is it too late?
I can speak towards the metric. So the metric has been set for numbers of fish produced exclusively for the purpose of feeding southern resident killer whales. And that metric is roughly 600,000 thereabouts for the area north of Cape Falcon. And that metric was exceeded. In other words, we did not compromise this metric in any way, shape, or form. In fact, we exceeded it by nearly 50%.
Okay. John, what were you about to say? Thank you.
Yeah, Chair Wall, the reason we put that on this slide this year, I think it was August of last year during the Orca, there was the question during the Orca process about the salmon season process, and the question was, is that the first metric we look at in the council? And I think I said no, because there's all these ESA limitations, and so it's like we're looking at a lot of things at once. So we added that metric this year, so you can see that some of the ESA limits or criteria on the other stocks were more constraining, and therefore kept that ocean abundance for the orcas well above that threshold. So that's why we have to look at everything simultaneously rather than just one at a time.
It's late in the day, so I'm not sure I'm getting this, but it sounds to me like what you're saying is that the feds and we do look at what the killer whales need in this process, almost like we would treat the others, the weak stocks.
That's
that
correct.
even close?
That's correct. Yeah. If the rest of the weak stocks didn't exist, then they would look at that
This would be
threshold
the-
first, but you seldom get there because you hit the other limits first. And so that's why there's several hundred thousand or several hundred thousand more than what the Orca limit would have been on its own.
Thank you. That's helpful. Then my last question, anything immediate, your thoughts on the question about Oregon, to put it crudely, Oregon fish going to other places to be caught?
Chair Wall, thank you for the opportunity to respond. There is, I think, a little bit of misunderstanding of what is the primary criterion or the consideration for stock conservation and preservation of opportunities closer to the spawning ground. The documentation that was cited is, I believe, based on stock composition for the Southeast Alaskan troll fishery. And in that context, I will confirm that the percentages of that catch composition of Oregon stocks is fairly high. It's about 40 to 45% of Columbia River stocks, primarily fall Chinook, but also some summer Chinook stocks. About 25% of the stock of the catch composition is Oregon coastal stocks, and then there is another large component that originates on the Washington coastal areas. So, but that is not the only information that we have, because what I believe is of more interest is how the stock performance is. And when you look at the distribution of where these adult fish wind up, one of the fisheries is not showing you the full picture. It is what I would like to say is that we have consistently met our objectives for spawner escapement for these Columbia River stocks in the recent past. We are less consistent with the Oregon coastal stocks, but in general terms have met them. And in addition to spawner escapement objectives, we have also managed to provide for large individual stock-based fisheries, which are the stocks that are primarily managed through the Pacific Fishery Management Council, and opportunities terminally, either really close to the mouths of the rivers or in fresh water itself. So those are the terminal fisheries. So the percentages for these fisheries is not negligible. And over time, I would like to note that when compared to previous years, such as 2009 through 2018, the relative impact of these Southeast Alaskan and other abundance-based aggregate stock fisheries has been reduced since 2019. So when you compare the average catches or catch rates, harvest rates perfectly, from 2009 to 2018 versus 2019 through the present, you see a reduction in those high ocean fisheries catch levels. So I think it is important to maintain a broader look at how the stock performs for each stock. And it might be more informative when considering all the various metrics that contribute to stock performance and stock health, population health. And maybe my colleague would like to add something to that.
I think Chairwell Christine covered most of it. I guess there's an awful lot of ways to look at all these different numbers, and I think one thing that I took home after kind of reviewing where we're at, I was looking at Pacific Salmon Commission Chinook technical team. They put out an exploitation rate report every year, and so that one looks at the total run rather than just the type of fish that were caught. So it's the overall look, and it looks to me like roughly 75 to 80% of our Columbia River stocks are making it back to the mouth of the Columbia. Then of course they're subject to our own harvest in river. And for the northern and mid Oregon coast, it's somewhere in the 70-75%. Just to put things in context, roughly 3/4 of our fish are coming back to the river mouth. So,
I mean, all that said, we're always going to be looking for more opportunities for where you can get more fish in all of these processes. Goes without saying.
Well, it does seem like a legitimate question to look at.
Chair Wall, if I may add, also I failed to acknowledge that the Alaska Department of Fish and Game has endured the lowest allowable catch during 2025 since 1985. So the catch level fisheries quite a bit.
Commissioner Spilberg.
Yeah, thank you, Joel. Just real quickly. Yeah, John, I would love to see those numbers or where you got that data because it is hard to find. It really is. Yeah, I know. We've tried to look for it and anyway, I'd love to see some of that. So down the road, maybe we could.
I have one other bit of optimistic news for the lower Columbia River natural coho. This year's forecast is over 100,000, and if it's true, that would be the highest. It'd be the highest forecast since we started, and it would represent the second highest run for that stock. So
Which one was the stock?
lower Columbia River natural coho, they call them LCN naturals, but that's pretty impressive. I mean, there was quite a while when that was more like 20,000. So that was some optimism there.
So I guess just one clarification. So I think this is an important discussion and I'm glad we're having it now. But again, just to clarify, much of the structure under which these harvest levels are set and the distribution is governed under the Pacific Salmon Treaty, right? So there is a much larger structure that we would have to be addressing. And I'm not saying that shouldn't be a discussion, but it's a much bigger thing than us sitting at this table and deciding, well, we want to see more fish coming back to Oregon, and so be it.
They won't let us just choose. Sorry, go ahead and answer.
Thank you, Commissioner Morrison, for the question, Chair Wall. Yes, that is absolutely correct. It's a much larger picture. So if I were to summarize the process, I'd say it starts with the international obligation under the Magnuson-Stevens Act for equitable share of natural resources such as salmon fisheries between the countries of the United States of America and Canada. And all things being equitable, we are primarily in that forum looking at equitable share between those countries. And Alaska being the entity for the U.S. that harvests fish that are far north migrating. And that is the claim to fame for our natural Oregon stocks, whether it's primarily the coastal stocks have this attribute, but also the Columbia River stocks are the ones that move quite a bit up north and therefore are subject to those fisheries. Whereas the Washington fish are primarily subjected to Canadian fisheries. So the jurisdiction of the Pacific Salmon Treaty ends with the with the Rogue River. So the U.S. national interest does not cover the Oregon Klamath Management Zone, whereas the discussions that take place in the Pacific Fishery Management Council is directed at attribution and sharing of domestic stocks, which is the next level. And that goes all the way down to the Mexican border, that jurisdiction. And once we have that in place, during that process, the domestic considerations, there are allowable impacts left for nearshore and freshwater opportunities, but they are later on hashed out, so to speak, by the jurisdiction in place, whether it's Oregon or California or tribal entities for that matter. Hopefully that addressed your question.
It's complicated.
It does. It made clear that it's even more complex than I thought.
All right. Thank you for that. I think it's a discussion that will come up again. And I appreciate that you were willing to answer our questions. So let's look to, do we have, no, we don't. We already did the testimony. Hello. It is late. Is there a motion?
I move to amend OAR 635 divisions 0003 and 013 as proposed by staff in attachment 3.
Second.
second.
Beat you to it, Becky.
Which one? Moved and which? You're on D.
It's been moved and seconded to amend OAR 635 divisions 003 and 013 as was just read into the record. Let's do a voice vote on this one, if you will, Michelle.
Labhart,
Yes.
Hatfield Hyde,
Yes.
Bilbrey,
Yes.
Paul DeFreeze,
Yes.
Modal,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Wall.
Yes, motion carries, and thank you very much. We will go to Exhibit F, and after that, we just have one other. So will the people, Holly? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde, Commissioners, Director Colbert. For the record, I'm Holly Hutchko, the Sport Fish Restoration Coordinator. Today, I'm here to present a request for approval of the sale of the Don Linley property that was purchased by ODFW in 2014 on the Alsea River to Lincoln County for continued public access. Next slide, please. By working closely with Oregon State Marine Board, we provide technical assistance and funding to local agencies and other partners to maintain approximately 1,200 public access facilities for boating and fishing. Since 2000, ODFW has invested about $31 million in over 180 sites statewide to build new boating access, maintain, and upgrade existing sites. Next slide, please. In 2008, the Marine Board and Lincoln County received strong public input to add a new public boat launch on the upper tidal section of the Alsea River. The only other public access on the lower river is in Alsea Bay at the Port of Alsea Marina, which is the red star shown there. And there are several other private access points shown in blue dots on the map. Most of these are private RV parks that charge fees for launching. Upstream, the next public access point is at Barkley Point, which is at River Mile 17, along with several other public sites upstream of that. Between 2011 and 13, Lincoln County, the Marine Board, and ODFW evaluated multiple potential properties and ultimately agreed to purchase a site at River Mile 8.2, then owned by a private party, which is the yellow star on that map. ODFW completed the purchase in 2014 using U.S. Fish and Wildlife Sport Fish Restoration funds for 75% of the cost, with match from Marine Board for the other 25%. Since it was privately owned, the seller's asking price of $330,000 was above the appraised price of $295,000. So Lincoln County worked with Oregon Wildlife Heritage Foundation to raise the additional $35,000, and the property purchase was completed. The parcel, which is the yellow star on the map, is on the tidewater portion of the Alsea River, about 10 minutes drive upstream of Wallport, and it's approximately 10 acres in size. This stretch of the Alsea River is popular during fall fisheries for Chinook and coho. Next slide, please. The Don Linley property was previously a private RV park that is undeveloped other than the remaining old electrical RV hookups that are still there. And you can kind of see the access road there on that slide off of the highway. One requirement of the federal funds used to purchase the property is that the state recipient must hold fee title. So ODFW became the owner of the site with a recorded deed interest from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Marine Board for co-funding the acquisition.
After the property was acquired, Lincoln County signed a lease with ODFW to maintain and operate the facility and for them to proceed with construction of the boat ramp. Next slide, please. After securing the property, planning began. A wetland survey was completed. Marine Board developed ramp designs and presented them at a 2016 public meeting. Attendees requested a larger facility, prompting design revisions. Later, a cultural site assessment, bathymetric survey, and hydraulic survey analysis was all completed for the design. The county also acquired land across the highway for a well, which was drilled in 2019. By 2021, the county was working with a consultant to advance the project through permitting and planning, with construction projected by this year. Due to delays in staff turnover at the county, the planning and permitting was never completed to move forward with the construction. New county staff then held another public meeting in 2023 to gauge public interest in development of the site. At that meeting, there was very little support for a motorized boating site at this property, and most of the attendees wanted the site to stay undeveloped as is and continue to be used for kayaking, swimming, angling, and a public park use. In February of 2024, Lincoln County informed us that they wanted to purchase the property because they no longer planned to pursue the motorized boat ramp. And that was because of the change in public opinion and county priorities. So there has been public involvement in the project from the beginning, including in the multiple opportunities for public to comment on our proposal today, which is selling the property. Those opportunities recently were at the January 2026 Lincoln County Board meeting, the Public Land Advisory Committee meeting in 2026, and the Marine Board meeting. At all of those meetings, there was no public testimony or comments on this property sale. And we heard during our commission process here only from one person that was in support of this sale. And then there's a support letter in your file from the county. Next slide, please. So while project partners and supporters were disappointed the boat ramp would not be constructed, ODFW wants to be flexible to changing public and partner views and priorities. And we really want to focus on keeping the property open for continued public access and bank fishing. A benefit of this particular property is that it contains a flat, easy to access open shoreline, which provides bank angling opportunities for diverse access needs, such as children or limited mobility anglers. You can see there's not blackberry, and it's really easy to get to the whole shoreline looks like that. So ODFW has confirmed with Lincoln County that as part of the sale, if approved, a deed restriction would be placed to protect that continued public access. The deed language will ensure public access for the future and will incidentally also help to protect the beneficial forested wetland at the property and the estuary tidal wetland habitats that are present at the site. Since federal sport fish funds were used to acquire the property for the purpose of building this motorized boat ramp, and the property is no longer going to meet that purpose, we had to obtain permission from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to dispose of the property. ODFW does not want to continue ownership of the property since we could invest these designated boating access funds in other sites. In 2024, the Fish and Wildlife Service approved that we could sell the property, but would need to pay back the funds to them. We have since completed all the federal compliance and state steps to move towards this property disposal, including approvals from DAS and the Public Lands Advisory Committee, as well as the county and the Marine Board have also obtained approval from their boards for the sale. Federal rules require using Yellow Book appraisal methods for the payback of those funds, and this was completed in January 2026, and the property is currently valued at $250,000. Next slide, please.
So in closing, we wanted to thank our partners at the Oregon State Marine Board, Oregon Wildlife Heritage Foundation, Lincoln County, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We've done lots of great projects. We'll continue to keep increasing and improving boating access safety. And even though this, particular project couldn't come to fruition. So our recommendation is to approve the sale so we can pay back the funds, and this will help us maintain compliance and eligibility under the Sport Fish program, for which we receive about $9 million annually. Upon sale, we can invest the boating access funds to another project, and the sale of the property would ensure no loss in public access at the site by ensuring through that deed restriction that Lincoln County will continue to provide that public access in the future. So thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do you have a question?
Not really a question. Thank you, Chair Wall. It was more of just an expression of disappointment because the public access for the upper LC Tidewater is there is none basically. It's a long ways coming up through shallow water, coming up from the bay. And anyway, like I say that I know a lot of the public was disappointed because we really do need some public access for that upper end. It's kind of almost made it a private fishery up there in that upper end. Just wanted to express that.
Thank you, Commissioner Spilberg. Commissioner Moldo.
Thank you, Holly. One thing caught my eye, the appraised value declined pretty substantially. Did anything happen to the property? 18% decline over 10 years is kind of unusual in this economy. What happened?
Good question. Chair Well, Commissioner Moldell. So I know a little bit about this. So when we originally bought it for the $330,000, the appraised value was $295,000, like I said. And so we paid the $295,000 and got donations for that above appraised value. The depreciation when we did the recent Yellow Book appraisal was because that appraiser said that it was originally overvalued a bit, and the property has gone down in price. So we did use an appraiser that uses that federal approved process, and it's one that we work with constantly that we felt was a fair assessment of the price. So unfortunately, it's worth less now than it was before. There was not a change in the site at all that would have depreciated it other than just the market value being lower.
Thank you.
Yep.
This is a detail, Holly, but we don't have anybody with testimony, but we do have somebody who commented and was upset with us for buying property. Would you consider just checking if you can respond to the email from that person and let them know we're selling it, not buying it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Wall. I thought about doing that, but I didn't want to do that before today.
And it might not be help them, but just if you wouldn't mind, that would be
Yes.
great. Commissioners, is there a motion on this one?
I move to approve the sale of the Don Linley property to Lincoln County.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to approve the sale of the Don Linley property as was just read into the record. Let's do a voice vote on this one, if you will, Michelle.
Morrison,
Yes.
Modal,
Yes.
Aldefreeze,
Yes.
Spellbrink,
Disappointment vote no.
Lampard,
Yes.
Wall.
Yes.
I don't have Becky online at the moment.
Okay. Thank you, Holly. Appreciate
you.
your work on this. Let's go to our final item, which is Exhibit G. Here comes Sarah, and it looks like we have Andy online, so go ahead, introduce your topic and start right in.
Yes, thank you, Chair Wall. Sarah Reif, Habitat Division Administrator. Again, I'm going to hand it right over to Andy Spurka. He is our Private Forest Accord Grant Coordinator, and he's going to deliver the presentation for us today.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me right now?
Yes.
We can
All
hear
right,
you,
thank
we
you.
can see you.
Perfect, thanks. Well, good evening, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde. I think she was on. Director Colbert and members of Commission. For the record, my name is Andy Spurka. I'm the Private Forest Accord Grant Coordinator, and I'm presenting here with Sarah Reif, the Habitat Division Administrator. We're here today seeking the Commission's approval to fund a new round of projects from the recent 2025 Private Forest Accord Grant solicitation. This grant program, which is funded biannually through the State General Fund and partially from the harvest tax revenue, came about from a historic 2021 compromise between conservation and timber industries, who joined forces in a groundbreaking agreement called the Private Forest Accord. The goal of the Private Forest Accord, the PFA, is to protect aquatic resources, provide long-term stability and regulatory assurances for forestry for permitted practices covered under an incidental take permit, or an ITP. The Oregon Department of Forestry is pursuing that ITP and from the federal services, which requires a habitat conservation plan. As part of this process, the PFA created a grant program to provide conservation benefits for species anticipated to be covered under the Private Forest Accord Habitat Conservation Plan. From the impacts from those permitted forest practices. In early 2023, ODFW established an advisory committee. The advisory committee is made up of diverse perspectives and views which in our view means better decisions. There are 7 voting members on the committee representing conservation, timber industry, and small woodland owners, and a member from the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund Advisory Committee, or OCRF. The 5 ex officio members share expertise from key agencies and act in an advisory role to the advisory committee and department. The advisory committee's role is to advise the department on the development of this grant program and provide funding recommendations to the department and Fish and Wildlife Commission for final approval. So today, we are seeking the Commission's approval to fund 25 projects totaling $10,545,992.99 in expenditures from the Private Forest Accord Grant Program, with over $12 million in matching funds. These projects are discussed in greater detail in Attachment 5 and range in type from fish screening and passage projects, restoration of stream structures and function, reconnection of floodplains, road decommissioning, and riparian habitat restoration. These projects, recommended by the Private Forest Accord Grants Advisory Committee, are from the Private Forest Accord Grants' 3rd open solicitation, which saw increased engagement over the past 2 years. The submission overview map in Attachment 4 shows the broad reach and impact this grantee program has in all corners of the state. We've been seeing more and more engagement come in year after year. This year alone, we had 80 submissions from across the state requesting over $39 million in funding. The solicitation also introduced a brand new funding pathway this year that made water transaction projects eligible for funding, such as the Oxbow Ranch Deer Creek Irrigation Modernization and Flow Restoration Project, which is also recommended for funding today. The Oxbow Ranch Deer Creek project, which takes place in a cold water priority area for ODFW, is a water transaction project located in Josephine County. The primary goal is to restore flow and improve water quality for 15 miles of Deer Creek, which will 0.735 cubic feet per second of permanent in-stream water rights. The increased flow delivered from this project will benefit several anticipated PFA Habitat Conservation Plan covered species, such as the Southern Oregon, Northern California coast coho salmon, the Southern Oregon and Northern California coast fall Chinook salmon, the Klamath Mountain Province Road River and winter steelhead, Oregon coast cutthroat trout, and the coastal giant salamander. The grantee for this project, Trout Unlimited, is working with a close group of partners, including the Oxbow Ranch landowners, ODFW, and OWRD. Additional support comes from the Illinois Valley Soil Water Conservation District, the Illinois Valley Watershed Council, BLM, U.S. Forest Service, and the Rogue Basin Partnership. From our perspective, this project is a key example of how ODFW can be supporting partners in implementing the Climate Resilience Executive Order. So as you can see, this grant program is providing a great opportunity for projects that move the needle when it comes to conservation outcomes. And I'm sure, as you can appreciate, narrowing down $39 million in project requests to a $10 million budget was a significant challenge. Through a collaborative effort involving multiple agencies and the invaluable contributions of the PFA Grants Advisory Committee, who work closely with the department to review and recommend projects, along with expert input from regional review teams and ODFW PFA stream biologists, we've identified this shortlist of 25 projects for funding this year. These projects are carefully selected to deliver the most positive, direct, and meaningful impact on Habitat Conservation Plan covered species. The shortlist encompasses a diverse range of project types submitted by a variety of applicants from around the state. The department and the committee believe the chosen projects offer far-reaching and impressive benefits with the potential to significantly advance our conservation goals. And with that, we conclude our presentation to the Commission on the Private Forest Accord Grant Program funding request. Staff's recommendation is the Commission's approval for this funding request. At this time, we're happy to try and answer any questions you may have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andy. Commissioners, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that Mark has one.
Oh, okay, let's go to Commissioner Morrison first, and then we'll go to you, Commissioner Laphart.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation and for all the work that went into narrowing that down. I know it's really hard to choose from, I'm sure, well, I know because I looked at them, they're all great projects, and getting that down to the shorter list is difficult. Clearly, that's guided by the work of the advisory team and this very clear ranking criteria, which is, I guess, one of the questions I have. I looked at that closely because you're depending on that, and of course, we're depending on that to help guide us to the highest value projects. Seems to me those ranking criteria make a lot of sense. There's a heavy emphasis on, number one, how well constructed the proposal is, and then importantly, how well it ties to the goals of the PFA. One of the factors that has lesser weight is the applicant capacity piece. And that makes sense to me unless we've had problems in the past with applicants not actually being able to deliver. I know we're only a couple of years into this, but have we seen any projects fail because applicants have not been able to deliver? Or awardees, I guess, have not been able to deliver.
Go ahead, Andy.
Thanks, Sarah. Commissioner Morrison, Chair Wall, thank you for that question. We've really not experienced that. We've had about one or two projects where it was one of the applicants actually dissolved, and that was the only thing that's occurred in the last few years.
And reallocate? Okay.
Yes.
Correct. It will be recaptured and put right back into our funding for the program and reallocated to next year's solicitation.
Thank you.
I do have one question, and we've talked about this a little bit before. There's a remarkable set of work here, and so my question has nothing to do about the ones that are in here. The question is about, we heard last month about the Minum project and the value of being able to acquire property like that. And so my question is, we have talked in this program about looking in the future to acquisitions and easements so that we can add to our, if there are critical or specific properties, what's that look like? Can you just talk a little bit about where we are now with that issue?
Chair Wall, thank you for the question. Yes, so we are prepared. Actually, we've been working the last few years to prepare the conservation easement acquisition side of this program, and it's currently going in front of the advisory committee this year. And we expect to be having it in this year's solicitation for the 2026 offering.
And Chair Wall, to clarify that it is conservation easements on non-forest land that is explicitly laid out in the rules as the eligible types of acquisitions for this program, at least for now. If you'll remember in the rulemaking, that was all the further we could get. There's some broad kind of catch-all lines in the rule where it could potentially be revisited in the future, but for now, that's the state of the rules.
Thank you. And I missed Commissioner Laphart. Sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Laphart.
Okay, thank you, Chair Wall. So Andy, I just wanted to pass on the thanks to the advisory committee. They do the heavy lifting of evaluating all the projects and the criteria. And I also want to know, is it okay if I just can contribute a penny and then that will take that 99 cents up to $1? I'd be glad to commit a penny to round it up if you didn't mind. So.
Oh,
better mind.
We'll send you the paperwork for that donation.
Okay, do we have, thank you, a motion on this one?
I move to approve the 25 projects recommended for funding by the Private Forest Accord Grant Program Advisory Committee as described in attachment 5, with the provision that department staff may make administrative adjustments to project budgets not to exceed 10%.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the 25 projects recommended for funding by the Private Forest Accord Grant Program Advisory Committee, as was just read into the record. Let's do a voice vote on this one, please, if you will.
Morrison,
Yes.
Modal,
Yes.
Halderfreeze,
Yes.
Spellbrink,
Yes.
Labhart,
Yes.
Wall.
Yes. Thank you to Sarah and Andy and for
Thank
waiting
you.
this very
you.
long day.
Thank you, Andy and Sarah.
Thank you. Have a good day.
And unless somebody has an objection, I think we are adjourned. Thank you all for a great
Thank you, Connor.
and long day.
Great job, commissioners.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.